Hey guys, tonight we're travelling a little farther back than usual. Say 30,000 years or so, give or take. You're about to wake up in a damp, smoky cave surrounded by strangers wearing questionable fur, with no phone, no toothpaste, and definitely no streaming platforms. In fact, you're going to get a deeply intimate look at what it was really like to be a caveman. And spoiler, you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments, what city are you in and what time is it right now where you are? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up cold. Not, I forgot my blanket cold, this is bone-deep aching cold. The kind that makes your teeth hurt and your toes curl inwards like they're trying to retreat back into your legs. You're lying on a bed of furs that smell like wet dog and old smoke. Above you, a ceiling of uneven limestone slopes into darkness, soot-streaked and pulsing gently with the glow of the dying fire at the centre of the cave. The air is thick and smoky, carrying that distinct aroma of burnt wood, damp rock and something meat-related, possibly tragic. Around you, the rest of the clan is still asleep, or pretending to be. One man is snoring so loudly it echoes off the cave walls and circles back for an encore. A child nearby coughs in his sleep, wrapped in a heap of rabbit pelts. You shift and hear the soft rustle of your own fur garment, something between a tunic and a poncho, crudely stitched from something that might have once been a boar, or a bear. You honestly don't want to know. Your body is sore from sleeping on stone despite the layer of hides. Your back pops when you sit up, your muscles stiff from yesterday's activities, which mostly involved panicking, running from bees, and learning the difference between a spear and a very sharp stick. There's no morning alarm, just the slow shuffle of others waking up, stretching and grunting. One woman tosses a clump of moss onto the fire to get it smoking again. Another clutches a baby that somehow manages to pee, cry, and punch her all at once. A dog-like creature, probably not technically a dog, but something proto-doggish, wanders in from the cave's mouth, sniffs around your feet, then promptly curls up on your furs like it owns the place. You let it. It's warm, and warmth is a rare luxury here. You shuffle toward the fire pit, which is now being coaxed back to life. The embers glow dimly, casting long shadows on the cave walls. Those same walls painted with crude but haunting images of bison, deer, and ghost-like handprints. It's not exactly art school material, but there's something eerie and beautiful about it. You suspect someone in the clan takes this very seriously, possibly the same person who refuses to eat anything, unless it's been blessed by a bone with holes drilled in it. Breakfast, if you can call it that, is already being prepped. A bowl made of hollowed-out wood, or maybe part of a skull, is passed around with yesterday's leftover marrow. It's thick and jelly-like, and it jiggles in a way that's frankly offensive. Still, it's the most calorie-dense thing you'll eat all day, so you dig in with your fingers, trying not to taste it too much. Someone offers you a bite of root. It's raw, bitter, and tastes like dirt with attitude. You chew it anyway, grateful for the crunch. Your teeth ache already. You know that prehistoric dental hygiene is about as advanced as your ability to spell your own name in this timeline, which is to say non-existent. So every bite comes with a hint of gamble. One wrong crunch and it's goodbye moa mola borsad and hello, dying of infection in the woods. Outside the cave, the wind howls through the trees. You know it's early because the sky at the entrance is still grey-blue and the birds haven't started screaming yet. You're in a forested valley, flanked by stone cliffs, and judging by the frost glittering on the ground, it's somewhere between late fall and early, oh no, everyone's going to freeze again. This is your life now. This cave, these people, that weird proto-dog who might be trying to eat your fur blanket while pretending to be asleep. No phones, no roads, no plumbing, no alphabet. No, oops, I forgot to log into work, just survival. And it's already exhausting, and you've only been conscious for 20 minutes. Still, there's a rhythm to it all. A slow, unhurried pace, nobody's for rushing anywhere. Time stretches like animal sinew here. Long, fibrous, a bit gross, but kind of beautiful in its own way. There's no 9 to 5, just light and dark, hunger and fullness. Cold and slightly less cold. You start to feel the gravity of it, not just the physical weight of survival, but the mental shift. The way your brain starts simplifying everything into what can I eat and what will kill me. One historical fact for you. Scientists believe that Neanderthals and early Homo sapiens like you might have coexisted, and possibly even interbred during the periods like this. So it's entirely possible that someone in your clan has a neighbour whose brow ridge is suspiciously pronounced, and who insists on sleeping alone under a pile of moss. There's actually still debate over whether Neanderthals were socially integrated or separate but friendly-ish. Some theories suggest regular cooperation, others hint at occasional violence and territorial disputes. You'll probably find out firsthand soon enough. Fringe fact: archaeologists have found evidence that some Paleolithic people ground up mineral pigments like ochre and used them not just for cave art, but also for decorating their bodies. So yes, someone in your cave clan is likely wearing primitive body glitter and calling it ceremony. You sit by the fire, sipping hot water that tastes like bark and ash, and watch as the rest of the clan slowly comes to life. The hunters stretch and grunt and talk about yesterday's deer chase like it was the Olympics. The gatherers consult their bundles of dried herbs and roots. A child is chewing on a rock and no one stops him, which probably says a lot about the limits of parenting at this stage of civilization. You don't know what's planned for today, but one thing's certain: it will involve cold feet, weird smells, and at least one close call with death. So go ahead, settle in. You're officially a caveman now. Your stomach is already complaining, which feels rude considering the mushy bone jelly you forced down just 20 minutes ago. But hunger doesn't care about timing out here. It's a background noise, a dull gnawing pressure that never really goes away. And since there's no pantry, no snack drawer, and definitely no delivery service, you're left to scavenge. Time for the most glamorous part of prehistoric life, the root hunt. You and a few others grab digging sticks, long wooden poles fire-hardened at the tips, and shuffle out of the cave, bundled in furs like sad, smelly burritos. The ground crunches underfoot with frost and old leaves. The forest around you is quiet, save for the occasional caw of a distant bird or the rustling of some creature that's probably as hungry as you are. Your first task of the morning is digging for edible roots, which basically means stabbing the dirt repeatedly and hoping you don't hit a rock or an angry insect nest. You learn quickly that the difference between food and poison is sometimes only obvious after you've eaten it. The others watch you with mild amusement as you pull up what looks like a turnip but smells like old onions and feet. They nod approvingly. Apparently that's a good one. The group fans out through the undergrowth, scraping up tubers, bitter greens, and the occasional lucky mushroom. You try to remember the vague instructions someone grunted at you yesterday. White cap, no stripes, safe. Red top, white spots, dead. Honestly, it's not super reassuring. You end up stuffing your pouch with bark strips, random herbs, and something the others called cattail, which is disappointingly not from a cat. After an hour of crawling, crouching, and nearly stepping on what was either a very angry snake or the worst stick ever, you regroup with the others near a fallen log. One of the women has cracked it open with a rock and is scooping out squirming, shiny grubs. She offers one to you. You stare at it. It stares back, or at least it would if it had eyes. You eat it. It pops like an overripe grape. Honestly, it's not the worst thing you've tasted. Nutty, slimy, mildly humiliating. You trudge back toward the cave with your collection of dirt-covered food, sore from squatting, hungry despite the wriggly snack, and smelling like the inside of a compost heap. Life here is, let's say, extremely textured. You constantly fluctuate between, is this edible, and I hope I don't die of it today. You learn something about survival out here. It's slow. So slow. There's no rush, because rushing leads to injuries, and injuries here are basically a countdown to death. So even gathering food feels like a low-stakes heist. Every decision, every motion, every tiny plant pulled from the ground, each one could be the thing that gets you through the next day, or ends you. Back at the cave, the air is warmer and thicker with smoke. Someone's managed to toss some resin-covered twigs onto the fire, and it flares up with a satisfying crackle. Your small group dumps the gathered food near the cooking stones, and now begins the ritual of cleaning, slicing, smashing, and guessing how to make these plants slightly less awful. One of the older clan members, a hunched woman with eyes like flint and exactly 3 teeth, picks through your haul, separating good bitter from bad bitter with frightening speed. She smacks your hand when you try to eat something that she says will make your heart stop and your bowels start. Duly noted. There's a kind of porridge being cooked, a stew of roots, shredded bark, and something that smells like burnt fur. You volunteer to stir it and immediately get scolded by a bubble of whatever the heck this is. It lands on your hand and you swear loudly, only to be shushed by everyone at once. Apparently yelling at food is considered bad luck. While the porridge simmers, the real prize of the morning is brought out. A chunk of marrow bone from last night's kill. It's been cracked open with a hammerstone, and the inside gleams with pale, fatty goo. A child scoops some out with a stick and hands it to you. You hesitate, then slurp, warm, meaty, slightly gritty, but high in calories, which is all that matters. Out here, fat is gold, carbs are gold, protein is gold. You're a walking machine designed only to avoid death and occasionally complain about how bad its bark tastes. Historically speaking, early humans didn't just randomly chew on everything hoping for the best. Okay, some of them probably did. But over time, they built a remarkably complex understanding of plants, animal behaviour and food prep. There's evidence of early cookery here. Not just fire roasting, but pit cooking, fermenting, even soaking poisonous roots to detoxify them. Your cave clan might not know why something works, but they know that it works, and that knowledge is sacred. Fringe fact of the day. There's evidence that some early humans intentionally left food near anthills to let the ants clean it, like prehistoric dishwasher service. So the idea of you delicately laying a chunk of fat-covered meat near a swarm of ants and coming back later to retrieve a shiny clean bone, not as weird as it sounds. As you slurp your stew, thick and chunky and not entirely unpleasant, the conversation, or what passes for it, rolls around the fire. Grunts, gestures, and the occasional meaningful stare. Language isn't fully formed here. It's more emotional than structured. You start to get the rhythm of it. Raised eyebrows mean, "you kidding me?" A short, sharp grunt means food now. A series of low whistles might be danger or look at that cloud. It's not efficient, but it works. Somehow. There's some debate among scholars whether early humans used musical tones as part of their language. Some even suggest singing evolved before speaking, which means, if that's true, your cave-dwelling buddies might be grunting in rhythm not just for fun, but as actual communication. So yes, you might be sitting in the middle of the earliest jam session in history. You sit back on your fur mat, fullish and slightly more warm. You've survived breakfast, your belly is not empty and your limbs are still attached. A good start by Stone Age standards. The proto-dog from earlier wanders over and licks your bowl clean, then plops down beside you like it's earned a share. You let it. Everything here is shared. Food, fire, risk. There's no luxury of selfishness when the mammoths aren't falling out of the sky. You lie back for a moment staring at the ceiling where soot stains swirl into shapes, bison, spears, moons, a handprint that looks far too small. The cave breathes with you, warm and ancient, and despite the discomfort, the smell, the ever-present dirt, you start to feel a rhythm to it all. Like maybe, just maybe, you're not terrible at this. Then someone nudges you. Time to go gather firewood. Of course it is. You step outside the cave again reluctantly, because nothing in you wants to face that biting cold wind one more time. It cuts straight through the layers of fur, hide, and stubbornness, chilling every part of your body that dares to exist. The air smells like frozen pine and distant animal droppings, fresh, earthy, and slightly ominous. The sky is a dull greyish blue, like someone tried to paint it hopeful but ran out of pigment halfway through. And yeah, it's official now. You are not built for Ice Age mornings. You look around and realise there's no sunshine, no birdsong, no warmth, no mercy. The trees, mostly ancient conifers, stand like silent judges watching your every clumsy step. The wind whistles through the narrow gaps in the rocks, and your breath comes out in thick white clouds. It's hard to believe anything survives out here, and yet you know the forest is teeming with life. You're just not the top predator anymore. You're a soft, squishy thing walking through the world's oldest freezer with a slightly pointy stick and no real plan. You and a few others head out with baskets, rope, and general anxiety, splitting off in small groups to gather firewood. You trudge past sharp rocks, patches of crusty snow, and old animal tracks half filled with ice. You're hyper-aware of every sound, the snap of a twig, the rustle of leaves, the occasional distant growl that makes your stomach twist. Out here, everything is either hiding, stalking, or fleeing, and you, lucky you, are just trying not to freeze to death. The weather is more than just inconvenient, it's actively malicious. This is Ice Age climate at its most unforgiving. Not every morning looks like this, but when it does, the danger isn't just discomfort, it's real creeping, slow-motion danger. If your fire goes out, or if you misjudge how much wood you need for the night, the cold will slip in and claim someone. It doesn't care who, it doesn't even hurry, it just waits. That's why everyone's so twitchy about keeping the fire fed. It's not just heat, it's survival insurance. Your fingers go numb within minutes, even tucked in hide mittens. You stop every so often to stomp your feet or blow into your hands, but it doesn't help much. You kneel by a fallen log and begin breaking off dead branches. They snap with satisfying cracks, sending little clouds of powdery bark dust into the air. You tie them together with sinew rope and sling the bundle over your shoulder, heavier than expected. Someone nearby nods in approval. You pretend you're not crying inside. Historical side note, this miserable frozen situation was actually kind of standard. For much of early human history, people lived during glacial periods where ice sheets covered much of the northern hemisphere. Homo sapiens didn't just visit the Ice Age, we took up long-term residence in it. That's part of what shaped our brains, our habits, even our bodies. Cold forced innovation, clothing, fire maintenance, group cooperation. You didn't survive the Ice Age by being a loner with a spear. You survived by sharing, adapting, and always watching the sky. You remember someone mentioning that the weather shifts fast here. One moment it's quiet, the next it's snowing sideways, then back to blue sky as if nothing happened. You glance up warily. The clouds look thick enough to threaten snow but disorganised, like they're still debating whether to ruin your day. You head farther down a slope, past a frozen stream glittering in the dim light. You crouch by another fallen tree half covered in moss and brittle fungus, and start breaking off smaller twigs for kindling. As you work, you catch a glimpse of something moving between the trees. Fast, low to the ground. You freeze, heart thudding, hand tightening around your stick like it's going to do anything. Then it's gone. You wait, ears straining until the forest settles again. Could have been a lynx, or a wolf, or, if your luck is truly special, a cave lion. Those were real, by the way, bigger than modern lions with long legs and no manes. And they did not respect personal boundaries. Honestly, you start to appreciate how fragile the balance is here. Every trip outside the cave is a gamble, a quiet dare to nature. Let me pass today, I'll try not to be too delicious. Fringe fact for you, some Ice Age humans likely made shelters out of mammoth bones and hides, especially in open tundra areas where trees were scarce. Literal mammoth bone mansions. It sounds like a myth, but archaeologists have found rings of bones, tusks, and evidence of roofing materials that suggest these massive animals were used not just for food, but for architecture. Imagine living inside your dinner. Very resourceful, very metal. Oh. You bundle up more sticks, hefting the weight onto your back. It's awkward, poking into your ribs, but you can already feel the reward. A warmer night could mean less shivering with fewer cold-induced regrets. You turn to head back to the cave, following the path marked by other returning clan members, some chatting in low tones, some silent, all carrying fuel for the most important thing in your shared life, the fire. The debate among scholars continues about how much early humans understood seasonal changes and long-term climate. Some think we tracked the stars, watched animal migrations, and predicted shifts with more accuracy than we give credit for. Others argue it was more reactive, just dealing with weather as it came. Based on how your feet feel right now, you're leaning toward the just winging it theory. Nobody in your group looks particularly thrilled with today's frost levels. Back at the cave, the mood is more cheerful than you'd expect. The fire's been built up again, and smoke trails upward through a carved chimney-like gap in the rock. People are talking more, moving more, the rising heat bringing back feeling to their limbs and animation to their faces. You toss your bundle on the pile near the fire, and someone claps you on the shoulder. It feels weirdly validating. You sit down, pulling your furs tighter, letting your toes thaw by the flames. Someone offers you a hot drink. Well, hot might be generous. It's lukewarm root water with chunks floating in it, but you drink it anyway and pretend it's cocoa. The proto-dog flops down beside you again, putting its cold nose directly on your leg, because of course it does. It sighs like it's had the hardest day out of everyone. And in that moment, despite the dirt, the danger, the discomfort, you feel something close to peace. You're alive, you're warm. You made it through another Ice Age morning. Congratulations. Only about 30 more years of this left. You've been alive for, a few days now, maybe a week? Time's a slippery thing out here. No clocks, no calendars, just sunrises, sunsets, and the number of frostbite scares you've racked up. This morning, after choking down a cup of warm bark water and a very questionable nut paste, you're finally ready to face the greatest challenge of the day, getting dressed. Now, if you're imagining some simple throw-on-a-hide-and-go situation, you're sorely mistaken. Nothing about prehistoric fashion is convenient. It's less rugged survival chic and more itchy cryptid cosplay. Your outfit is a chaotic mess of layered skins, mostly stitched together with sinew and guesswork, smelling faintly of wet goat and despair. Putting it on is a process, a deeply undignified one. You wrestle your legs into hide trousers that are so stiff they fight back. Then there's a tunic made of stitched rabbit pelts that, frankly, looks like it was assembled by a blind, angry child with no sense of proportion. And over that a heavy fur cloak that's basically just a shaggy, uncooperative carpet. The fasteners, bone toggles, rawhide strips, and luck. No buttons, no zippers, no velcro, just knots you hope don't come undone when you least expect it, like, say, mid-chase from a giant predator. Honestly, the worst part is the smell. Everything reeks. Your clothes smell like blood, smoke, old sweat, and a hint of mildew. It's not that hygiene is completely non-existent here. It's just that soap hasn't been invented yet, and you're constantly surrounded by dirt, open fires, and animals that think rolling in feces is a lifestyle choice. You fumble with a belt that's more symbolic than functional, mostly used to hang tools, a flint knife, a pouch of crushed charcoal for marking things, maybe some dried meat if you're lucky. The leather bites into your waist, reminding you that comfort is a modern luxury. You look around and realise no one else is struggling like you are. The other clan members move with ease, wrapping and tying their garments like they've done it 1,000 times. Which, well, they probably have. Fun historical fact. Prehistoric clothing was surprisingly advanced. Evidence from archaeological sites, yes, but they found ancient bone needles, suggests that early humans had specialised tools for tailoring hides and sewing together complex garments. It wasn't all loose sacks and flappy pelts. They created fitted clothing layered for insulation, with intricate stitching techniques to keep warm. Some of it even had decorative touches, beads, carved toggles, fringes, functional but with a hint of flair. As you finish gearing up, you notice one man sharpening a bone pin with a terrifying focus. He's working on what looks like a fur hood, its interior lined with down feathers for extra warmth. You feel a spike of envy. You want that hood. Your ears are always cold. You briefly consider a trade, but then remember the last time someone tried bartering for clothing and ended up with a slap and a reputation for being weirdly into feet. Best to let that dream die. Footwear is another disaster entirely. Your boots are made from stitched hide wrapped with sinew, stuffed with dry grass or moss for insulation. They are not waterproof, or breathable, or even the same size, but they do protect your feet from frostbite and, less helpfully, from knowing what you just stepped in. Walking in them feels like moving through pudding while wearing bags of laundry on your feet. And then, just as you're finally layered up and halfway convinced you're dressed, someone walks by wearing nothing but a loincloth and a big smile. Because of course, some members of the clan, hardened by a lifetime in the cold, simply don't care. Their skin is like leather. Their nerves are made of steel. You watch as this human popsicle casually steps through snow without flinching and realise, yet again, that you're the weakest link in the survival chain. Fringe fact time. Some ancient cultures used body paint or mud as a kind of extra skin. It protected against sun, insects, even helped with insulation. There's a theory that in extremely cold climates, smearing your skin with fat or clay could help preserve body heat. So if you ever feel the urge to rub goose grease on your chest before bed, just know it's historically valid, and maybe a little gross. You finish the last touch, a strip of animal gut tied around your forehead to keep sweat from freezing on your eyebrows. Not exactly stylish, but practical. That's the general vibe here. If it doesn't serve a purpose, it's dead weight. You don't own more than a couple of items, no closet, no outfits for different occasions. It's one ensemble, constantly repaired, always dirty, forever itchy. Still better than freezing. There's a small moment of pride when someone passes you and gives a little grunt of approval. A subtle sign that you finally managed to not look like a complete fashion disaster. You may still smell like a fermented yak, but you look the part. Layers tight, belt secured, fur cloak draped just right. You are now officially dressed to survive. You join a group preparing to head out. Hunters, mostly. They wear lighter gear, designed for movement. Tighter wrappings, softer shoes, fewer dangly bits. The gatherers, on the other hand, wear bulkier outfits with large sacks and heavy boots, prepared to kneel and dig for hours. Everyone dresses according to function, and suddenly the choices make more sense. You see now that clothing here is survival math. Too little and you freeze, too much and you overheat, sweat, and then freeze anyway. There's an open debate among researchers about how early humans developed textile knowledge. Some argue that the use of plant fibres predates weaving, suggesting that people used grass or bark strips long before stitching leather. Others believe that hide clothing dominated until much later, when agriculture allowed for the rise of flax and wool. Either way, it's clear that people like your new cave roommates weren't just wrapping themselves in dead animals and hoping for the best. They were calculating insulation, layering, and adapting to an environment that very much wanted them extinct. You take one last deep breath before stepping away from the fire again. This time you feel a bit more prepared. The cold still bites, but your cloak seals better. Your feet are less numb, your movement more fluid. You're not comfortable, but you're not miserable either. And honestly, that's a win. As you walk, you catch your reflection in a puddle. A blurry, distorted face wrapped in fur. Dirt smudged across your cheek. Hair matted, but eyes alive. Somewhere between human and animal, somewhere deep in the middle of becoming, you are dressed not just for the weather, but for the world as it truly is. Wild, cold, and completely indifferent to your suffering. Looking good, you prehistoric legend, the first thing you learn about talking in the Stone Age is that no one's doing it the way you think they are. You don't wake up and say, "Good morning," or "Hey, how'd you sleep?" You grunt. You make weird mouth sounds. You raise your eyebrows with extreme emotional commitment. And somehow everyone seems to get it, except you. Language here isn't about words. It's a symphony of grunts, gestures, facial expressions, and dramatic pointing. You are, without a doubt, the least eloquent caveman in the valley. At first, you try copying the others. Someone gestures at the firewood pile, makes a low chuffing noise, and raises both eyebrows. You respond with what you think is the same sound and accidentally insult his grandmother. Apparently, tone matters. A lot. You spend half the morning watching, mimicking, and mostly failing to contribute to basic conversation without causing social ripples. There's a moment when a child hands you a stick and says something that sounds like "ka." You repeat it. "Ka." And he immediately bursts into laughter and runs away. You're later informed, through a combination of eye rolls and mocking hand gestures, that you just asked to eat squirrel poop. Great, you're learning. Eventually you start picking up patterns. Simple ones first. A quick click of the tongue means no. A low hum while exhaling. Yes, but also I don't love this. You see people emphasize meaning by pounding their chests, slapping thighs, or making bizarre but very specific eye contact. Language is more like interpretive dance than anything else. You're constantly guessing and watching for reactions to see if you nailed it or just proposed marriage by accident. Historical fact for you, early humans didn't speak in full sentences like we do, but that doesn't mean they were silent or simple. The foundations of language likely go back hundreds of thousands of years. There's strong evidence that Homo sapiens, and possibly Neanderthals too, had complex vocal abilities. Our vocal tracts, tongue control, and brain structures were primed for speech long before written language ever showed up. So no, they weren't just grunting incoherently, it was meaningful, dynamic, and weirdly efficient. You try building your vocabulary, you focus on the important stuff: food, fire, danger over there, and please stop throwing bones at me. You invent a personal signal, both hands raised slightly while raising your eyebrows. You hope it means peace, but someone keeps interpreting it as "I'm ready to arm or wrestle," which is not ideal when you're clearly the weakest person here. There's also a musical element to the way the clan communicates. You notice that around the fire at night some people whistle to convey certain emotions. Others beat short rhythms on logs while gesturing. It's like your group has its own proto-language, somewhere between spoken word and song. It's beautiful in a raw, unfinished way. You get the sense that this is how culture starts, not with a declaration, but with shared noise that slowly gains meaning over time. And there's humour too. Oh yes, even cavemen laugh. You quickly become the clan's accidental court jester just by existing. The older kids mimic your awkward hand signals. One of the hunters starts calling you the sound you make whenever you don't understand something. You pretend it doesn't bother you, but deep down you know you've earned it. You try initiating conversation. You grunt to the fire tender, pointing to the woodpile and making what you think is the "I can help" gesture. She looks you over, snorts, and lets you try anyway. That's a win. Later, you point at someone's spear and raise your brows in admiration. He grins and thumps his chest, then points at your spear, currently stuck awkwardly in your belt at the wrong angle, and makes a motion that clearly means sad soft spear. The whole group chuckles. You're learning. Slowly, painfully. Here's a fun fringe theory. Some linguists believe laughter predates speech, evolving as a social glue long before language ever got its act together. So yeah, you being laughed at. That's not a bug, it's a feature. You're officially contributing to the social fabric of early human society by being a lovable mess. But you can also feel the deeper part of language developing. Late at night, when the clan is quiet and the fire is low, you hear murmurs, gentler, more rhythmic sounds, stories. Maybe not full narratives like modern tales, but the beginnings of oral tradition. A man draws shapes in the dirt while murmuring in soft, steady tones. A child listens, eyes wide. Another elder taps a stick gently in rhythm. There's a magic in that moment. A reminder that language isn't just for barking commands, it's for sharing meaning. Passing on something more than survival. You start to understand that even this early, people needed stories. There's still debate among scholars about when true symbolic language emerged. Was it 70,000 years ago? 100,000? Longer? What's clear is that by the time your clan existed, language was already forming. Organic, fragmented, but real. Not just sounds, but shared context. Inside jokes, nicknames, arguments, agreements, the stuff of society. You're starting to fit in. Barely. The clan has begun to recognise your vocal quirks, your weirdly exaggerated gestures, your inability to say fire, without sounding like you're choking, but that's all part of it. The group absorbs your strangeness and folds it into the greater mess of communication. No one's giving you speeches, no one's asking you about your feelings, but when someone passes you a carved bone with a marking scratched into it, a hunting tally maybe, you take it, and everyone nods. You're not fluent, but you're no longer foreign. At one point, a toddler waddles up to you, points at a lizard skittering by, and says something that sounds suspiciously like "pa pa." You say it back. She claps and runs away, and for some reason that sticks with you. That maybe the first true language wasn't about giving orders or naming objects, but just repeating something back so someone knew they were heard. As the sun starts to lower and the shadows stretch long, you sit near the fire and practice your new phrases. A few grunts, a half-hummed melody, a gesture that might mean thanks or please stop staring. Someone throws you a scrap of meat. You grunt your best gratitude noise and manage to make 3 people laugh again. Not bad, not bad at all. Fire has moods. You wouldn't think so. Coming from a world of gas stoves and clicky lighters, but here fire is practically a living thing. It crackles, hisses, sulks, and sometimes just refuses to cooperate no matter how nicely you grunt at it. It's your job tonight to keep it alive, a task that sounds simple until you're the one on your knees in the cold, coaxing a half-dead ember back into something less pathetic. There's a small pit in the centre of the cave, lined with stones blackened by years of use. The ashes are warm but lazy, and the only thing burning is a single stub of half-charred pine. Smoke curls upward into the night air like it's trying to sneak out and quit its job early. You blow gently, nothing, you blow harder. A puff of smoke greets you in the face like an insult. Perfect. The clan's firekeeper, a woman with the face of a hawk and hands like leather, drops a bundle of kindling next to you. Dried grass, twigs, a bit of old moss. She doesn't speak, just raises her eyebrow and waits. You nod as confidently as someone who has no idea what they're doing can, and she wanders off to hover nearby, silently judging. You stack the kindling like you've seen others do, loose and airy, shaped into a sort of little cone. Then you feed the fire some bark curls, whisper a desperate apology for whatever you did wrong in a past life, and gently blow again. This time the ember stirs, just slightly. A faint orange pulse. Encouraged, you keep at it, mouth dry, eyes watering. Slowly, painfully, the kindling begins to smoke, then, finally, tiny flames flicker to life. They're shy at first, like baby deer, but you add a few thin twigs and they catch. The warmth starts creeping in. You feel an unreasonable wave of pride. You did it. You have summoned fire. Take that, nature. You hear a grunt behind you, the firekeeper again. She glances at the flames, then at you, and gives the briefest nod before moving on. That's probably the highest praise you're getting today, and you'll take it. Here's the thing. Fire out here is not optional. It's not ambience or comfort. It's the difference between living and becoming a popsicle for some Ice Age scavenger. Fire cooks your food. Fire softens hides. Fire hardens tools. Fire keeps predators from sniffing too close to the cave's edge. It's not just survival, it's sacred. Historical fact time. Early humans learned to control fire, possibly as far back as 1.5 million years ago. But by the time of your cave clan, fire-making was a practice skill. People didn't always wait for lightning to strike or drag embers from tree stumps. They used fire drills, flint sparks, and even the iron pyrite to ignite tinder. And once you had a fire going, you guarded it like treasure. In some cases, small embers were carried in bark containers over long distances to keep it alive between camps. Tonight, your job is to babysit the flames. You sit by the pit with a small pile of fuel, thin twigs, thicker sticks, and logs for when the fire gets hungry. The clan eats nearby, roasted meat, warm roots, smoky broth in bark bowls. You take your portion and eat by the fire, tossing in twigs every so often to keep the flames dancing. The fire seems to reward your efforts with a steady glow. Shadows flicker on the cave walls, painting twisted forms that resemble animals, people, and the occasional unintentional nightmare. You stare into the fire until your thoughts start drifting the way they always do when you've stared too long at something burning. Then it happens. A loud snap. The fire jerks sideways. Sparks shoot into the air. Everyone tenses. You look down and realise a damp stick you added has hissed, split and disrupted the entire structure. Embers roll out. One lands on your fur boot. You pat it down quickly, trying to act cool about it while internally screaming. The fire sputters, threatening to die. The firekeeper is at your side in seconds. She doesn't yell, she doesn't grunt, she just fixes it, like a surgeon. With one hand, she slides the burning sticks back into a perfect pile. With the other, she feeds in fresh, dry wood from her private stash. The flames catch, the crisis passes, and she turns to you with an expression that says in every language and timeline, "Don't touch anything else." You nod, understood. She leaves you a handful of dry moss and walks away. Lesson learned. Damp wood is not your friend. Fringe fact: some anthropologists believe that fire may have contributed directly to human evolution, not just by cooking food, but by changing our social behaviour. Sitting around a fire gave us time to bond, to talk, to tell stories. Our brains got bigger, and our nights got longer. Fire gave us a shared space where predators wouldn't follow, and for the first time we could relax just a little and think. You feel that tonight. As the flames settle into a warm, steady burn, the energy in the cave changes. People sit closer. Someone hums a low, rhythmic tune. A child traces patterns in the soot on the floor. It's not silent, but it's peaceful. The fire's heartbeat sets the pace for everything else. There's still debate among scholars about how early humans truly domesticated fire. Some argue it was pure luck at first, capturing wild flame from natural sources and just keeping it alive. Others suggest intentional creation came earlier than we think. Your own experience tonight? Let's call it somewhere in between. You didn't invent fire. You barely kept it breathing. But you were part of the ritual, the stewardship of something ancient and powerful. Eventually your shift ends. Someone else takes over. A teenage girl who moves like she was born in the smoke. You hand off the stick you'd been using to stoke the logs, and she accepts it like a scepter. You step back, fingers singed, clothes smoky, eyes stinging, but victorious. You crawl toward your bed of furs and slump down, body aching, face still warm from the fire. You smell like a chimney, but you feel good, like you did something real today, like you contributed to the clan's beating heart. As sleep creeps in, you can still hear the fire, crackling softly, glowing in the dark. A reminder that here, in this raw, merciless world, the only thing standing between your fragile body and the endless cold is a handful of burning sticks and someone willing to stay up and feed them. Tonight, that someone was you. You wake up to shouting. Not angry shouting, but the kind that makes your stomach tighten anyway. Short bursts of sound, excited and sharp, but you sit up too fast, head spinning, fur cloak tangled around your legs. The fire's burned down to embers, and your throat tastes like ash. People are already moving, grabbing spears, tightening leather straps, slinging pouches across their backs. A hunter near the entrance holds up 2 fingers, taps his chest, then gestures into the trees. You catch the words, if they are words. hornface, a gun near stream, and something that probably means finally breakfast with legs. A hunt is happening. Someone tosses you a spear, you catch it poorly and nearly stab your own foot. A few of the younger hunters snort and walk off, but one of the older ones, the guy with the permanently squinting eyes and a beard like a wet moss wall, nods at you. You're in. Or at least you're allowed to follow along and try not to mess everything up. There's no dramatic prep sequence, no good luck speeches or chest thumping. You just fall into a group of 6 others and start moving into the trees. Your breath fogs up instantly, and every footstep crunches against frozen leaves. It's early, grey and bitter, but adrenaline is already kicking in, pulling your body forward even though you're not sure what you're chasing, or if you're ready to find it. The group moves quietly, way quieter than you expected. These people don't stomp or chatter or laugh nervously like you do. They glide, stepping only on soft patches of ground, ducking under branches, communicating with glances and tiny hand signs. You're immediately the loudest, clumsiest thing in the woods. One misplaced step and a branch cracks under your boot, loud as a gunshot. Everyone freezes, glares. One woman gives you a look like she's mentally measuring your distance from the nearest bear den. You mouth sorry, even though that concept probably hasn't been invented yet. Still, you push forward and eventually the sounds return, a distant splash, the low murmur of running water. A rhythmic tapping that turns out to be a woodpecker going ham on a tree trunk. Then just ahead, movement, a rustle, something big. The lead hunter crouches, motions for everyone to fan out, then points. You ease up behind a thicket and see it. A massive woolly animal at the edge of the stream, huffing clouds of breath into the morning air. It's not a mammoth, thankfully, but it's big, broad, with a horned nose and shaggy mane. Possibly a steppe bison. Possibly something more extinct and even less thrilled about human company. The plan is, well, that's the thing. There's no whiteboard with strategy notes here. The hunters know what to do because they've done it 100 times. You, meanwhile, are hiding behind a bush and trying not to drop your spear from sheer nerves. Suddenly, movement. 2 hunters on the far side appear, whooping and waving branches. The animal startles and bolts directly toward you. For a moment, everything goes quiet in your head. Just the sound of thudding hooves, breaking twigs, pounding earth. You raise your spear without thinking, half because everyone else is doing it, half because you're going to be trampled if you don't. The bison veers last second, dodging your spot, crashing through brush and giving the others a clean angle. 2 spears fly, 1 hits. The beast stumbles, another strike, closer, cleaner. The animal collapses with a low, drawn-out moan, and then it's over. Just like that. You stand, still holding your unused spear, heart thumping so hard it might actually leave your body. Someone claps you on the back hard enough to nearly knock you over. You think it's encouragement. Or pity. It's hard to tell. Historical fact, prehistoric hunting was rarely solo and never romantic. It wasn't about proving yourself or doing cool flips in slow motion. It was group effort, coordination, and a brutal understanding of animal behaviour. Hunts were dangerous, exhausting, and often failed. But when they succeeded, they brought enough food to keep a whole community alive through winter. There's a lot of debate about the actual tactics used. Some researchers believe early humans ran animals off cliffs, called game drives, while others argue for ambushes, pit traps, or long chases designed to wear prey down. Either way, the one consistent element was teamwork, which, let's be honest, you're still getting the hang of. As the adrenaline fades, you walk up to the fallen bison, breath fogging, eyes wide. It's bigger than you expected. Up close, its bulk is staggering. Muscles, horns, fur so thick it could be its own continent. Blood steams from the wounds, pooling in the frost-covered leaves. You don't feel triumphant. You feel small, humbled. This thing was alive a minute ago, and now it's a future stew. One of the hunters offers you a knife. You hesitate, then nod. It's time to help with the butchering. It's messy, warm, surprisingly fast. Everyone knows their part. Skin here, cut there, slice tendons, crack joints. They work like a machine, hands red and steaming, voices low. You try to follow, mimicking what you see. Cut where the meat pulls. Don't waste the fat, save the marrow bones. And there's no part of this animal that's wasted. The hide will become clothing, the tendons, string or glue. The bones, tools, ornaments, and sometimes weapons. Even the stomach might be used to carry water or stew. Every piece has purpose. Fringe fact, in some prehistoric cultures, There's evidence that hunters left offerings or performed rituals after successful kills, maybe as thanks, maybe as spiritual insurance, scratched bones, arranged stones, small carvings left near the site. So if you suddenly see someone drop a bead next to the body or whisper a chant over the entrails, don't panic. You're just witnessing the earliest version of saying grace. After hours of work, the animal is reduced to pieces packed in hide slings, ready to be hauled back to the cave. Your arms ache. Your boots are soaked. You smell like blood and pine cedar, and you still haven't technically hunted anything, but you were part of it. You were there, you saw it, you helped. On the walk back, no one says much. The forest is quieter now, and the weight of meat and hide makes everyone move slower. But there's a shared rhythm to the silence, like a job done, like respect. Even the teasing is lighter. Someone calls you tree stabber, miming the way you flailed at a bush or mid-hunt. It's not exactly a title of honour, but it's yours. You limp back into the cave with sore shoulders, frozen fingers, and a quiet, exhausted sense of belonging. The others take the meat to be smoked, dried and stored. You sit by the fire, watching the fat melt and drip onto the stones, hissing as it hits the heat. You didn't kill anything today. But you didn't die either. By now, you're starting to notice something strange. Despite the chaos, the dirt, the constant threat of freezing or being gored by something with tusks, this clan of cave-dwelling humans kind of has its act together. There's structure here, rules, routines, little social rhythms, and not just the kind that separate who sharpens spears and who fetches firewood. It runs deeper, subtler. You can feel it when someone makes room for an elder by the fire, or when a child tugs a woman's hand and gets an immediate, practiced nod of comfort. This place may stink like boiled meat and unwashed feet, but somehow there's order in it. And it's not as simple as man hunts, woman gathers. Take this morning, for example. You wake up to the smell of smoke and singed hair. Yours, probably. And notice one of the clan's women squatting near the fire, elbow deep in some animal skin. She's scraping it methodically with a sharp flake of flint, muttering under her breath like it's personal. This isn't busy work, it's skilled labour. She's softening the hide to make waterproof boots, or maybe a baby sling, or something else essential that you would absolutely mess up if left to your own devices. Next to her, a young man is weaving plant fibres into what looks like a net. Not a decorative net. Fish-catching, possibly life-saving net. His fingers are quick and confident, and nobody's laughing at him or telling him to go throw a spear like a real man. That idea, not really a thing here, at least not the way you'd expect. You're starting to understand that roles in this community aren't rigid. They're adaptive. Fluid. People do what they're best at, or what's needed most. Yes, there are patterns. Some of the men are almost always out hunting. Some of the women usually tend to food or medicine or childcare, but there's overlap. You've seen women carry spears, you've seen men carefully braid vines and carry babies, and nobody seems to bat an eye. Here's a historical fact. Modern archaeological thinking has largely moved away from the cartoonish idea of cavemen as grunting, spear-wielding dudes while women picked berries and quietly stayed out of the way. In fact, studies of burial sites, skeletal analysis and toolware suggest that women in many prehistoric societies hunted, crafted weapons, and took active roles in survival. Likewise, men weren't necessarily the oblivious brutes we've imagined for centuries. They were caregivers, builders, and artists. Or two. Turns out gender roles were a lot more nuanced before civilization got involved and made everyone weird about it. One afternoon, you're asked to help carry firewood. Not because you're strong, you're definitely not, but because the guy who normally does it sliced his hand open trying to crack a bone and is currently sulking with it wrapped in moss. You're paired with a woman named something that sounds like nah, who communicates mostly through eyebrow movements and knows exactly how to stack sticks so they don't collapse halfway home. You try to be useful, you really do, but halfway through the trek your bundle slips and spills everywhere. Nah doesn't scold you. She just grunts, rearranges the load in a tighter bundle, and then, get this, she gives you the lighter half. You feel both grateful and mildly humiliated. She could absolutely bench press you if such a concept existed. On the way back, you pass a few of the gatherers sorting through plants. Some are squatting and digging up roots. One older man, clearly blind in one eye, is slowly examining leaves for bugs and rot. He works with such focus that the others wait patiently for him to give a quiet grunt of approval before moving on. You realise he's the plant expert. Maybe not the fastest, but definitely the one whose opinion counts. No one questions it. Fringe fact. In some modern forager societies still living traditional lifestyles, like the Hadza in Tanzania or the Agta in the Philippines, women have been documented hunting in groups, using weapons and leading expeditions. These roles aren't assigned based on fixed gender expectations, but on skill, availability, and the task at hand. So, yeah, your prehistoric idea of division of labour might need a serious update. Back at the cave, the cooking is a group affair. Meat from the recent hunt is being dried over wooden racks, while someone else, an older woman with the posture of a tree stump, grinds dried roots into powder using a flat rock and a smaller handstone. She's been doing it all day, humming low and steady. A younger boy sits beside him, watching every move. You'd call it mentorship if anyone here had job titles. Nearby, a girl, maybe 10 or 11, is sharpening spear points with rhythmic confidence. She's fast, focused, and clearly good at it. One of the adult hunters checks her work, nods, and then adds her finished spears to the hunting bundle. You can't help but feel slightly embarrassed by the poor wooden knife you spent an hour trying to carve that morning, which now looks like an old spoon with a personality disorder. You catch sight of the bead maker, the guy who doesn't hunt, doesn't gather, and mostly sits in a corner stringing shells and stones together. You'd assumed he was sort of the cave's eccentric uncle, but you've noticed something else. People visit him often. They trade, they wait for his finished work. Some of his beads are used in clothing, others for body decoration. You've even seen one of the clan leaders wear a string of them like a badge. So while he's not hauling firewood or throwing spears, he's clearly important. His craft has value, his weird little corner of culture matters, and that's the point, isn't it? Survival here isn't just about who's strongest, it's about contribution. Everyone finds their lane, and as long as you're doing something worthwhile, keeping the fire alive, drying meat, telling stories to keep the kids from panicking during storms, you're part of the group. There's no room for dead weight, but there's also no single way to be useful. There's still scholarly debate around whether these prehistoric societies were truly egalitarian. Some evidence suggests relatively equal treatment across genders, while other digs hint at hierarchies. But one thing is clear, the flexibility of roles was critical to survival, and probably to early forms of respect. If someone kept you warm, kept you fed, or stitched your cloak back together after a bear encounter, their value was obvious, regardless of age, strength, or gender. That night, you sit around the fire beside Nar and the plant guy with his immossive hand. No one says much. You offer a piece of dried meat from your pouch, and they both grunt and take it. You're not the best hunter. Your firewood skills are suspect. Your flint napping is an ongoing embarrassment. But today, you tried, and that's enough. You're not just surviving, you're starting to belong. Dinner starts the same way it always does. Someone burns themselves. Tonight it's the tall guy with a scar across his cheek, trying to pull a roasting spit from the fire, using only determination and a flat rock. He yelps, drops it, and the half-cooked meat rolls into the ashes. Everyone groans in unison. A few curse-like grunts echo off the cave walls. The dog thing perks up, hopeful for a dropped morsel. Dinner is a process. You're sitting on a slab of cool stone wrapped in your best and only fur cloak. Watching the chaos unfold, the smells are intense. Smoke, sizzling fat, bitter root stew, someone's feet, someone else's very musky armpit. The cave doesn't have great ventilation, and the wind outside is howling loud enough to make the stone walls vibrate. But despite the temperature and the stench, this moment, right now, is probably the highlight of your prehistoric day. A wide, flat rock near the fire serves as a cooking surface, slick with drippings from previous meals. A thick cut of meat, possibly bison, possibly deer, possibly something you'd rather not name, is roasting slowly on a spit made of sharpened wood. Every so often, someone flips it using a pair of sticks. There's no seasoning, no garlic, no salt, no sauce, just meat and fire, and yet it smells like good, really good. Hunger has a way of transforming charred sinew into a luxury item. You try to help by stirring the root stew in the bark cauldron, a bubbling concoction of tubers, leafy greens, and a small handful of something that looks suspiciously like moss. The texture is somewhere between chunky porridge and wet mulch, but you're starting to appreciate its warmth, even if the flavour is aggressively earth. One of the children brings over a carved wooden bowl and holds it out. You ladle in a steaming scoop of the green-brown mixture, and he scurries off to his family's corner, nearly tripping over the fur dog. You repeat this 5 or 6 times, portioning out food. No one rushes, no one fights over the biggest chunk. The food is shared in quiet rhythm, each person waiting for their turn, taking just enough. That, more than anything, surprises you. No hoarding, no grabbing. Just a silent agreement that everyone eats, or no one does. You've heard the stereotype prehistoric people were all desperate scavengers, barely clinging to survival, but the truth feels different. Yes, food is precious, yes, it's hard-earned, but it's treated with respect, not panic. The communal instinct here is strong. It's wired into the culture like firewood into the hearth. You finally get your own bowl of stew. It's hot, chunky, weirdly sour, and full of stringy bits that you don't recognise. You chew slowly, and a small bone surprises you mid-bite. You take it out and tuck it behind your ear. Apparently that's what people do when they find something interesting in their meal. You're still not sure why. Decoration? A snack for later? A warning to others? It's a mystery. One of the hunters slices thick chunks from the roasted meat and hands them out with a carved flint knife. You get a piece roughly the size of your palm, glistening with fat dark around the edges. It's so tender it pulls apart when you bite into it. No seasoning, no marinating, no fancy plating, but every bite carries the weight of hours of tracking, freezing, chasing and butchering. It's not just food, it's a story in flavour. Historical fact: while we love to picture prehistoric diets as meat-heavy, the real Paleolithic menu was diverse. People ate hundreds of plant species, including nuts, berries, seeds, roots and tubers, depending on what was locally available. And yes, they also ate insects. Often grubs, beetles, ants, protein-rich, easily caught and highly efficient, if you're able to get past the whole chewing on legs part. And then there's bark. Yes, bark. Not the outer flaky stuff, but the inner layer, called cambium, which can be scraped, dried, and eaten in a pinch. You've tasted it. Twice. It's like chewing wet cardboard with a pine aftertaste. Still, in lean seasons, it keeps people alive, and when mixed into stew with roots and herbs, well, you get what's currently sitting in your bowl. Tonight, though, you're lucky. The hunt earlier was successful. Spirits are high. No one was trampled or clawed or mysteriously poisoned. That last one did happen a few weeks ago, apparently, when someone misidentified a mushroom and turned the entire left side of the cave into a spontaneous vomiting circle. The healer figured it out eventually. The vomiter still twitches when he sees anything fungus-shaped. Fringe fact: in some ancient societies, meals were deeply ritualized. They weren't just about calories, they were a way to reinforce social bonds, pass down stories, even settle disputes. Archaeological evidence from ancient hearth sites shows people gathered in tight groups around communal cooking spots, often with shared utensils, indicating that the act of eating together was intentional, not incidental. Your clan doesn't have silverware or napkins, but you see the same patterns here: gathering, pausing, connecting. The chatter around the fire starts to grow as people relax. A few kids wrestle quietly in the corner, their laughter muffled by the thick furs. Someone tells a hunting story, pantomiming an exaggerated fall into a bush. The firelight flickers across their faces, casting deep shadows and highlighting the lines of exhaustion and laughter alike. You start to recognize people not just by their clothes or roles, but by their voices, their laughs, the way they hold their bowls or chew on sticks when thinking. The alpha, the clan's unofficial leader, sits near the back wall. He's not loud or bossy. In fact, he barely speaks, but when he does, everyone listens. Tonight, he offers the final cut of meat to the fire, holding it just above the flame for a moment before setting it down on the stone. A gesture of thanks, maybe, or superstition, or just a quiet habit no one questions anymore. Either way, it feels meaningful. You scrape the last of your stew with your fingers, licking them clean because napkins are not a thing, and wasting food would feel like a crime. Your stomach is full, your limbs are tired. The warmth of the fire has seeped into your bones. Outside, the wind howls again, brushing against the stone entrance of the cave like a reminder of how fragile warmth is. How close you are, always, to being cold, hungry and alone. And yet here you are, fed, surrounded, safe. Maybe not comfortable, but content. You lean back, bowl on your chest, eyes half closed, watching the fire curl around the last bone tossed in. Smoke rises in lazy spirals. Conversation fades into background hum, the kind that buzzes through the cave like a lullaby with no words, just people, full-bellied and alive, pushing back the night with fire and fat. It's not fine dining, but it's enough. and somehow more than enough. Long after the stew has cooled and the fire has settled into a slow-burning glow, you're still awake, not by choice. Sleep comes differently in the Stone Age. You would think with no screens, no clocks, and a full belly, your body would just shut down like a polite piece of meat. But here, in this cold, echoing cave, sleep is something you ease into, or chase desperately while everything around you does its best to ruin it. The others are lying down already, sprawled on piles of fur and woven mats of dried grass. A few are snoring, some lightly, some like they're in a competition. The proto-dog is curled against the foot of a woman near the fire, tail twitching. You try to close your eyes and drift off, but your brain won't shut up. There's too much going on. The fire cracks softly, casting flickering shadows that dance across the painted walls. The wind outside hums like a giant exhaling just beyond the stone. And then there's the art. You roll onto your side and find yourself staring at it again. The murals, the soot-black figures drawn in careful, looping strokes. Animals mostly. Herds of deer with exaggerated legs, bison mid-charge, what looks like a horse with its head too big and a tail like a paintbrush. There are handprints too, some tiny like a child's, some faded. One red and smeared like it was pressed in haste or panic. The walls are alive with movement, even in the stillness. You stare, eyes tracing each form, each curve, until you realise you've been looking at them for over an hour and still have no idea what they actually mean. You don't ask, because you already know the answer. No one tells you. These drawings aren't explained, they just are. But eventually curiosity gets the better of you, and the next morning you cautiously approach the man who seems to own the charcoal. He's thin, wiry, with hair that's more tangled than cut. His hands are stained black up to the wrists. He rarely joins the hunts, and you've never seen him gather roots or cook. But every night, after most of the clan is asleep, he crouches by the cave wall with a lump of charcoal or ochre, whispering under his breath as he draws. You point to the paintings, and then to him. You ask, tilting your head like an awkward tourist. He looks at you for a long moment, then nods. He picks up a piece of charcoal, hands it to you, and gestures toward a blank patch of wall. Encouragement, or a test, or maybe just a dare. You crouch and press the charcoal to the stone. It's smoother than you expected. You try drawing a bison. It ends up looking more like a potato with horns. The artist watches without judgment. When you're done, he smiles, not kindly, but with something that feels like approval, and then draws over your potato bison with bold, quick strokes that transform it into something oddly graceful. You feel both insulted and inspired. Historical fact, the oldest cave paintings found so far are over 45,000 years old. That's older than written language, agriculture, and most coherent thoughts. Some are made with charcoal, others with ochre or hematite. The artists used their fingers, sticks, even hollowed bones to blow pigment onto the walls. These weren't just bored doodles. Some caves suggest years of accumulated artwork, layered over generations, preserved like time capsules of visual memory. The purpose of cave art is still one of archaeology's great debates. Some say it was religious, offerings to spirits or gods of the hunt. Others think it was educational, a prehistoric slideshow teaching younger clan members how to recognise and avoid getting stomped by a mammoth. Then there's the theory that it was just art, expression. The human need to create even when survival is hard enough. Your artist friend, or mentor, or whatever he is, draws every day, sometimes multiple times, and his drawings change. One night it's a herd of reindeer, perfectly aligned. Another night it's swirling shapes that make you feel dizzy just looking at them. Once he draws a massive handprint surrounded by spirals and tiny claw marks. You ask what it means, he just shrugs. Fringe fact, in one famous cave site, a painting of a spotted horse matches the genetic pattern of real prehistoric horses whose DNA shows that exact coat. So either early humans were extremely observant, or they were just lucky pattern makers who accidentally nailed horse fashion before it was cool. Soon you're spending more time watching the artist than pretending to be good at anything else. You bring him new chunks of charcoal when you find them. He lets you help crush pigments, mix spit with powdered ochre, and once even apply colour to the wall under his direction. Your hand shakes, but the feeling is electric. You're leaving a mark, not just in the world, but on it. And slowly you realise that this isn't about recording events. It's about memory. About putting something somewhere so it doesn't disappear. About turning fear into lines, hunger into colour, longing into shape. There's a bison you drew with him that now lives on the cave wall standing still, always facing west. Every time you pass it, you remember the exact moment your stomach growled and the way the artist grinned and added a second stomach to your bison in solidarity. No one talks about feelings here, but they draw them. In animals, in handprints, in crude figures holding spears under a blood-red moon. And that's the strange thing, this cave, as brutal as it is, starts to feel like more than shelter. It's a canvas, a memory palace, a home, a one night before sleep you press your palm to the wall and outline your hand in charcoal. It's a little crooked, smudged at the edges, but it's yours. Proof that you were here, that you existed, that even if time swallows you whole, as it does with all things, this print might stay, and someone, thousands of years from now, might look at it and wonder who you were. You're starting to get confident, not like charge a mammoth, confident, but enough to think you can handle a task without bleeding. That illusion lasts precisely 8 minutes into your first solo flint napping session. It starts innocently enough. One of the hunters tosses you a chunk of flint and a hammerstone and grunts something encouraging, probably, have fun, or try not to ruin this. You nod like you know what you're doing. You do not know what you're doing. But how hard can it be? Flint is just prehistoric glass. You smash it. It turns into a knife. Easy. It is not easy. You squat beside the fire, set the flint on your lap and tap it gently. Nothing happens. You hit it harder. Still nothing. Then you whack it with confidence. Too much confidence. And the flint splits in a direction you didn't ask for. A razor-sharp shard slices open the web between your thumb and index finger. Blood. Instantly. It's not deep, but it's dramatic. The firekeeper notices. She walks over slowly, takes one look at your hand, then at the flint pieces scattered like a crime scene and lets out a sigh, so long it should be documented. Then she calls over the healer. You've met the healer before, the old man with mossy breath and a cloak made of feathers and small bones. He doesn't speak much, just gestures for your hand, inspects the cut, grunts something that may or may not translate to idiot, and proceeds to smear a green paste over the wound that smells like fermented snail guts. It stings like betrayal. Then he wraps it in something that might be deer intestine or just an exceptionally unlucky vine. Your hand throbs, your pride is dented. And the flint is still very much not a tool. Later that day, when your hand stops pulsing like a heartbeat in a horror movie, one of the better toolmakers takes pity on you. He sits beside you without a word, takes a new piece of flint, and starts to show you how it's actually done. The key, he explains through pantomime and patience, is control. You're not smashing, you're shaping, like chipping away at an idea until it agrees with you. He balances the flint against his thigh, grips the hammerstone at just the right angle, and taps. One flake comes off, clean, thin, sharp, then another. He turns the stone as he works, making each strike deliberate. It's beautiful. Precise. Not a brawl, more like a dance with rocks. Historical fact. Flint napping is one of the most skilled and underrated arts of prehistoric life. It wasn't just about having sharp rocks, it was about geometry, muscle memory, and subtlety. Archaeologists can tell a lot about a culture by its tools, how advanced the blades are, how standardized the shapes, even how much time was spent finishing them. Early Homo sapiens were basically engineers with fewer teeth and more dirt. The toolmaker shows you how to look for bulbs of percussion, those sweet spots on the flint where a clean break is most likely. You mimic him, carefully lining up your strike. Tap. The flake comes off. Sideways. Useless. He raises one eyebrow and you try again. Tap. Another failure. You can tell by the sound, the wrong sort of clink, but he doesn't stop you. He lets you mess up again and again, correcting only when you go too far off track, as it takes hours. Your hands are raw, your brain is tired. But then, finally, one flake slides off just right. Thin, sharp, and shaped like the tip of a small blade. The toolmaker nods. You grin like a child who just spelled their name in macaroni for the first time. It's not much, but it cuts. You spend the next few days trying to improve. You ruin 5 stones for every one success. Sometimes your flakes shatter. Sometimes they're too thick. Once you flake directly into your shin and leave a neat little gash that you pretend didn't happen. The healer is onto you, though. Every time you limp, he just grins and pulls out more moss paste. Fringe. Fact. Some ancient toolmakers were so skilled that archaeologists have found caches of standardized blades. Same shape, same size, same maker's signature. It's like our early humans had their own version of brand loyalty. If someone in your group made a killer scraper, their tools might be traded across vast distances. Oh, this one? Yeah, that's a Norg original. Great for hide work. Eventually, you start to understand the shapes. Not just what they look like, but what they do. Thick scrapers for hides, thin blades for cutting meat, tiny flakes for carving or piercing. You begin collecting your best pieces, keeping them close, admiring them when no one's watching. It's the first time you felt like you made something real here. Something useful. And then one afternoon someone brings you a pelt and points to your scrapers. They want your tools, not as a joke, not out of pity, just because they work. You hand one over with an awkward grunt that might translate to, "Thank you, I'm crying inside." There's still debate among anthropologists about how knowledge like this was passed down. Was it formal? Were there masters and apprentices? Or was it more passive? Kids watching adults, picking up skills by imitation and necessity. Based on your experience, it's probably a mix. You learn by doing, and bleeding, and eventually by doing slightly better. By the end of the week, you've got a little stash of serviceable blades. Nothing fancy, nothing worthy of a bead necklace, but they work. You've even carved a handle into one using a bit of bone and sinew, lashing it tight with strips of rawhide. It's not pretty, but when you slice a hunk of meat with it later that night, it glides through like soft butter. Everyone notices. A few nod. One grunts something that sounds approving. The toolmaker passes by and taps you on the shoulder with a satisfied sort of weight. You're not the best flint napper in the clan. But you're not the worst anymore. That honour belongs to the guy who chipped a blade and somehow set his own pants on fire. Which, to be fair, is hard to do when pants haven't been invented yet. Even before the fire is lit, before the food is passed around or anyone picks up a tool, you can feel it. The energy that comes when a bunch of people live together in close quarters without walls, doors, or personal space. There's always someone coughing, someone chewing too loud, someone stealing your favourite spot near the warm rock. And then there's the gossip. Yes, gossip. Turns out it's older than writing, older than farming, maybe even older than pants. It drifts through the air in this cave like smoke, subtle but always present. A glance here, a raised eyebrow there, a chuckle shared too loudly after someone leaves the fire circle. The words might be short, half-grunted, or sometimes just sound effects and facial expressions, but the meaning? Crystal clear and universal. You've stepped into one of the most ancient of human pastimes, prehistoric drama. It usually starts small. Someone doesn't pull their weight. Someone hoards a little extra fat off the meat. Someone's spear miraculously breaks right before a hunt. These things don't go unnoticed. You catch fragments of disapproval in side eyes, in the way people shift their seating to avoid someone, or in how food is distributed with a little more or less generosity than usual. The cave is an open book, and everyone's reading each other constantly. Today the story is about one of the younger hunters. Let's call him Gruck, because that's the sound he makes when he eats. Gruck has been loudly bragging about taking down a wild boar solo. The problem? There's no boar. Just a suspicious scratch on his arm and some meat that looks suspiciously like it came from an already dead badger. No one confronts him outright. That's not how things work here. Instead, people whisper. Literally. You hear a subtle exchange of glances. Someone reenacts Gruck's boar fight using a stick and a dramatic fall into the fire pit sand. It gets a quiet laugh. You realise you're watching social regulation at work, low-key, soft power, but effective. This kind of thing happens all the time. Someone slacks off, someone takes too much. Someone says something weird to someone else's partner, and the rest of the group doesn't ignore it. They metabolize it, talk about it, roll it around like a mental chew toy, and eventually it either fades away or becomes a kind of lore, a running joke, a cautionary tale. Don't be like Gruck, they'll grunt, the next time someone tries to sleep in while the rest are hauling firewood. Historical fact. Gossip isn't just idle chatter. It's been proposed by some researchers, including famed evolutionary psychologist Robin Dunbar, as a foundational tool for human society. In the same way grooming strengthens bonds in primates, humans use gossip to build trust, to define norms and reinforce group cohesion. Your brain is basically wired to track social dynamics. Who's in, who's out, who's cheating at spearmaking. It matters. Especially when you're one broken ankle away from becoming saber-toothed snacks. You start noticing it more and more. The quiet code of expression, who sits where, who gets food first, who gets to speak around the fire without interruption. There's a pecking order here, not carved into stone but drawn in shared glances and body language. The elder with the silver-streaked hair? No one speaks while she's humming. The short man with the limp? Somehow he always gets the best seat near the fire. No one questions it. You suspect it's because he saved someone important during some long-ago flood. That's the vibe anyway. Then there's the bead incident. You're near the fire minding your own business, carving a new handle for your flint scraper, when suddenly the artist, your cave Picasso, lets out a dramatic sound somewhere between a groan and a bark. Everyone looks over. He's holding up a beaded necklace, his expression full of betrayal. A few beads are missing. This might seem like small potatoes in the grand scheme of survival, but here, a bead isn't just decoration. It's value, status, effort. To steal one is to steal time, labour, and meaning. Within minutes, a hush falls over the cave. The artist paces in small, tight circles, muttering. A few people glance toward one of the teenagers. Let's call him Twig. Twig's eyes are wide. He's suddenly very interested in his own toes. Someone leans over and sniffs. Another pulls Twig's fur cloak aside. There, caught in the stitching near his hip, is a bright blue bead. There's no shouting, no punishment in the modern sense. No one drags him out into the snow or shaves his head with a rock. But there's a vibe shift. People pull back from him. Meals are served just a little slower in his direction. The kids avoid him during playtime. He starts sleeping farther from the fire. You watch it unfold with a mixture of awe and quiet fear. The group handles discipline with silence, with exclusion, social temperature control, and it works. Within 2 days, Twig offers up the necklace and adds 2 of his own beads to replace the missing ones. They are not as nice, a little mismatched, but they're his. He places the necklace in the artist's hands and steps back. Nothing is said, but the tension breaks. A few people grunt in relief. Someone hands Twig a piece of dried meat later that night. He's been readmitted. The ice under his feet has been refrozen. Fringe fact, in some surviving hunter-gatherer cultures, like the San people of southern Africa, social cohesion is maintained through practices like insulting the meat, publicly downplaying the value of someone's kill to prevent arrogance and keep everyone humble. In small groups, harmony is survival, and bragging is dangerous. So gossip and low-key sabotage of egos is not petty, it's protection. Even you get pulled into it eventually. One night someone mentions, without mentioning, that your flint scrapers are very interesting. You nod, proud, then realise the tone was sarcastic. You're not mad though, you've arrived. You're part of the conversation now, you're part of the gossip ecosystem, and maybe that's the most human thing you've done yet. You sit near the fire listening to the low murmurs, watching a subtle head nod, a half smile, a slow shake of the head. No one is shouting. No one's even really talking. But the story is unfolding right in front of you, passed like a torch in whispers and glances. It's not about survival anymore. It's about who you survive with. Death is not a surprise out here. It's not dramatic or sacred in the modern sense, or even rare. It just is. It happens like a cold wind or a rock slide. Sudden, brutal, and completely uninterested in your plans for tomorrow. Still, when it comes, the entire rhythm of the clan shifts. The fire still burns, the stew still bubbles, but the cave itself feels quieter, heavier, like the stone walls know what's happened. You wake to it. A hush, thicker than silence, the kind that makes your skin prickle. You sit up, blinks away the crusted sleep, and see the gathered cluster near the back of the cave. People hunched together, not frantic, not loud, just still. In the centre, lying on a thick layer of pelts, is the old man with the missing eye. He didn't make it through the night. You'd seen it coming, maybe. The way he coughed for days, the way his hands shook as he sorted herbs, the way he'd started sleeping closer and closer to the fire like he was already half leaving. But still, there's something final about the way his body lies now. Wrapped in furs, arms folded across his chest, eyes closed, jaw slack, like a wax figure made from smoke and ash. No one cries, not in the way you expect. There's no wailing, no clutching at his body, just quiet gestures, a hand resting on his forehead, a piece of ochre placed beside him. The fire tender walks over, squats beside him, and draws a spiral on the stone near his head with black ash from the hearth. Another adds a handprint pressed gently beside the spiral. It's a kind of language, a ritual, not written, but deeply understood. You sit back and watch, uncertain. You didn't know the old man well, but he taught you the names of 4 plants by grunting and poking you. until you got it right. He once patched a hole in your shoe using rabbit sinew, and didn't charge you a single grunt. He was quiet, sharp-eyed, and full of that weird prehistoric sarcasm that always left you second-guessing whether you'd just been insulted or blessed. Now he's gone. Historical fact: burials date back tens of thousands of years. Some of the earliest graves, like those found at sites in Israel and Europe, include deliberate arrangements. Stone circles, red ochre pigment, tools placed with the body. This suggests not just disposal, but reverence. A belief, however simple or complex, that death wasn't the end of someone's importance. You don't know what the clan believes. There's no formal prayer, no mention of gods, but there's intention in every movement. The beadmaker strings together a short necklace, 5 small shells and 1 carved bone, and places it over the old man's chest. The artist traces a deer near his feet. Someone else brings dried flowers. Not bright anymore, but carefully saved from warmer months. It's not mourning through words, it's mourning through action. Fringe fact: archaeologists have uncovered Paleolithic graves where the deceased were buried with tools, animal bones, even food, indicating a belief in some kind of journey beyond. In one especially haunting case, an infant was buried cradled in a deer's shoulder blade, as if being carried into whatever came next. We may never know exactly what early humans believed about death, but it's clear they didn't treat it as nothing. By midday, preparations begin to move the body. You're surprised to see it's not a quick affair. A group of 4, 2 hunters, the fire tender, and one of the elders, gather thick branches, tie them with sinew, and form a kind of stretcher. Others clear a path, brush away snow, and prepare the small rise near the back of the valley where the sun hits during the day. Not for warmth, just for meaning. You offer to help carry. They let you. The walk is short but deliberate. Each step feels heavier than it should, the weight of the old man not just in his body but in the role he played. The clan follows behind in a loose line, heads bowed. No one speaks. The only sound is the wind through the trees and the soft scrape of fur-wrapped boots on frozen earth. At the chosen spot, a shallow grave has already been dug. Not deep, just enough to keep scavengers out and time in. The old man is lowered in along with his cloak, a flint knife, the bead necklace, and a folded bundle of herbs. One by one, people step forward to place something in with him. A stone, a shell, a twig with a notch in it. You don't know what half of them mean, but they do mean something. You hesitate, then remove a small flake of flint from your pouch, one you'd carved yourself, not your best, but your first successful one. You place it at his feet. He watched you ruin 20 stones before you made that one. He said nothing, but when you held it up, he blinked once and nodded. That was enough. The grave is covered slowly. No rush. Snow is brushed gently over the top, then stones, then a handful of red ochre sprinkled in a line, and finally a handprint pressed onto one of the covering rocks. Yours. The clan turns and walks back to the cave in near silence. The wind seems to settle as you do. It's not about moving on, it's just about moving with it. You can feel the space he used to occupy, the way someone glances to where he used to sit, forgetting for a moment. The empty hush where his cough should be. That night the cave is subdued. Not sad exactly, just adjusted. The artist draws a new symbol on the wall. A spiral, long and stretched, trailing off into nothing. One of the children sleeps curled up in the old man's cloak. No one questions it. There's still scholarly debate about when symbolic burial began, when humans started truly grappling with loss. Some argue it started as simple hygiene or scavenger control. Others believe it reflects early consciousness of death as an idea, not just an event. You're leaning toward the second. You've seen it now, the care, the silence, the offerings. The way people touched him like he mattered. In a world where everything is fleeting, fire, food, even the warmth, what remains is memory. And even if no one writes his name, even if his body fades into the soil beneath the frozen trees, something remains. The deer on the wall, the flint in his grave, the way someone still adds an extra piece of meat to the stew, even though they all know he's not there to eat it. Death doesn't end the story here. It just changes who's telling it. It starts with a noise. You're asleep, curled near the fire in a nest of furs that smell like half a dozen different animals, most of which you sincerely hope are dead. The cave is quiet, save for the occasional snore, cough, or someone rolling over and kicking you gently in the ribs. You're drifting in that warm, half-lucid space between dreams and aching joints when it hits. A low growl, Not human, not your proto-dog, not the wind. A real chest-deep growl that rumbles through the stone floor and straight into your bones. You open your eyes slowly, hoping it was a dream. But the fire's still burning low, casting orange flickers across the cave walls, and everyone's awake. Every single member of the clan is frozen upright, wide-eyed and silent, even the children. The only sound now is the rustle of someone slowly reaching for their spear. Then the growl comes again, closer this time, louder, and very, very real. Whatever it is, it's outside the cave, pacing, waiting. You can hear the thud of heavy paws on frozen earth, the hiss of breath, the faint chuff of something sniffing the air, the kind of sound that makes your skin contract and your heartbeat echo in your ears. You stay completely still. You've heard stories. Everyone has. The hunter who wandered too far alone and never came back, the mangled paw prints found in fresh snow, the boulders scratched as if by claws the size of your forearm. But hearing about it and hearing it are two very different things. It growls again, and you finally place it. Sabertooth, as in the saber-tooth. Not the comic book version, not some fluffy museum skeleton. The real thing, Smilodon fatalis, big head, absurd fangs, murder in a fur coat, and it is outside the cave like it just dropped by to see if anyone left a snack unattended. The proto-dog is hiding beneath a pile of furs, tail stiff. Smart move. A few of the hunters rise, slowly gripping spears. The firekeeper tosses a chunk of resin-soaked wood onto the embers, and it flares up instantly, spitting sparks and casting harsh shadows against the walls. You're momentarily blinded by the brightness, then see movement at the entrance. It's just a flicker. A large shape moving past the mouth of the cave, low to the ground, shoulders rolling like a stalking cat, which to be fair it is, just bigger, much bigger. Historical fact, Smilodon wasn't fast like a cheetah. It was built like a wrestler, muscular, powerful, and capable of tackling prey much larger than itself. Those famous saber teeth weren't just for show, they were for puncturing windpipes and finishing fights quickly. And while there's debate about whether they hunted in packs or alone, either way, one of them would be enough to ruin everyone's week. The clan goes into practice silence. No one panics, no one runs, everyone just waits. You realise that they've done this before. Fringe fact. Some paleontologists believe saber-tooths weren't actually all that suited for long-distance chases. Instead, they likely ambushed prey, sneaking up in low brush or dense forest before pouncing. Which, fun detail, happens to describe your current environment almost perfectly. Yay, you inch backward, deeper into the cave, trying not to make a sound. Your newly flint-knapped knife is tucked into your belt. But let's be honest. It might as well be a butter spreader against something with a skull wider than your chest. The fire is stoked again, brighter now, a calculated risk. Predators hate fire, or so the theory goes, but flare it too bright and you reveal the entire cave's layout to whatever's outside. It's a prehistoric version of show them the map. Still, the clan's betting that heat and smoke will drive the beast away. Another snarl, this time followed by the sound of claws on stone. It's climbed the ledge. The alpha stands then, not with fanfare, just a quiet certainty. He grips his spear, moves to the entrance, and plants his feet like he's already imagining himself a cave painting. A few others flank him, including the woman who made your boots and the beadmaker. You're frozen halfway between admiration and existential dread. Then silence, heavy, pregnant silence, until a low hiss echoes from the shadows beyond the entrance, and something moves fast. The saber-tooth doesn't charge into the cave, it swipes. One massive paw flashes through the opening, catching the edge of a fur curtain, ripping it clean off and flinging it aside. The fire blazes brighter. Everyone tenses. And then, just as quickly as it came, the shadow withdraws. More footsteps outside. More pacing. The alpha doesn't move. He just stands, back straight, eyes focused on the dark beyond the light. After a moment, he hurls a burning stick out into the snow. It lands with a hiss, sending sparks up into the night. And then, after what feels like an eternity, the growling fades. Not fast, not like a retreat. More like a slow, disappointed turn away. The heavy footsteps grow quieter. The wind picks up again, and gradually the pressure inside the cave releases. Someone exhales, loudly. The proto-dog whines from beneath the furs. A child begins to cry. The alpha returns to the fire, sets down his spear, and sits, No words, no gesture of triumph, just the understanding that tonight everyone survived. There's still debate in the scientific community about how often early humans encountered apex predators like saber-tooths, cave bears and giant hyenas, but based on fossil remains showing claw marks on human bones and vice versa, it's clear that the danger was real. We weren't just hunting, we were being hunted. The rest of the night passes in a kind of exhausted silence. Sleep is shallow and scattered. The fire never dies down. Someone is always awake, stoking it, watching the cave mouth with wary eyes. You stay up longer than usual, knife in hand, though you know it wouldn't have helped much. Still, in the dark, you feel something stir in you. Not fear. That's been with you since the first time you tried to walk on frozen ground. No, it's something else. Respect. For this place. For the quiet heroism of staying alive one more night. For the way these people, your people now, don't flinch at the shadows but learn to live with them. In the morning there are new prints in the snow outside, deep, wide, almost elegant. Everyone gathers to see. The artist traces one in charcoal on the cave wall beside the deer. Just the paw print, no beast, no teeth. Just the shape it left behind. A warning, a memory, a promise. You wake up the next morning in eggs, feeling like your body is made of wet rope and regret. Your shoulder aches from clutching your flint knife all night. Your spine has moulded itself to the shape of a rock under your bedding, and your dreams were full of long fangs and growls. At some point, you're pretty sure you kicked the proto-dog in your sleep, because it's now eyeing you with the kind of side-eye that says, try that again and we'll see who's extinct. But your body isn't the only thing in distress this morning. Your throat burns, your head feels thick and floaty, your nose is half clogged, half leaking, you cough and it sounds like you just tried to swallow a campfire. Congratulations, you're sick. There's no such thing as a sick day here. There's no pillow, no soup, no just stay home and rest. Illness in the Paleolithic doesn't come with sympathy. It comes with herbs, fire smoke, and whatever the clan's healer has stuffed into a pouch this week. And unfortunately for you, that man has already noticed your hacking and wheezing and is approaching with the gleam of someone far too excited about beetle powder. He gestures for you to sit and squats beside you, holding out a thick wooden bowl that smells like boiled feet and pepper. You peer into the mix. It's brown, it's chunky, it's steaming. You sip. Instant regret. It tastes like someone made tea out of tree bark, moss, and a hint of dead fish. You gag, but the healer just nods like that's the correct reaction. Encouraged, he smears something green and sticky across your forehead and under your nose. It smells like mint and wet soil. You feel instantly more awake and simultaneously like you're being cursed. Historical fact. Early humans had some understanding of medicine. Evidence from ancient skeletons shows healed fractures, tooth surgeries, and even amputations that people survived. They weren't just winging it entirely. Plants were used to treat wounds, reduce fevers, and ease pain. Though, let's be honest, success rates probably varied wildly. Willow bark, for instance, contains salicin, a compound similar to aspirin. And while your healer probably doesn't know that chemically, he definitely knows it works. Today, though, your treatment includes a mystery paste, a weird root you're told to chew until your tongue goes numb, and something that looks suspiciously like beetle shells. You don't ask questions. You just keep coughing and accept your fate. Then comes the sweating. You're wrapped in furs and shoved closer to the fire, which sounds cozy until you realise the goal is to roast the sickness out of you. The healer tosses some pungent herbs into the flames, and they smoke heavily, stinging your eyes and making everyone else nearby relocate in protest. You sit there, nose dripping, lungs wheezing, eyes watering, and think, yeah, this is definitely helping. And then there's the tea. Dear sweet everything, the tea. He brings you a gourd full of warm liquid. This one's clear, which seems promising, until you sip it and realise it tastes like boiled rocks and onion tears. You drink it anyway, because the healer is watching, and he has the energy of a man who will definitely hex you if disrespected. You lie back, sweating through your furs, watching the flicker of firelight on the walls. The clan moves around you, some heading off to gather, others prepping tools, someone arguing gently over whether the dried fish from last week is still food or now bait. No one treats you like a burden. No one clucks over you like a modern nurse. You're just sick, and that's a thing that happens. The healer checks on you occasionally, mutters, adds more wood to the fire, and once tucks something under your arm that turns out to be a heated stone wrapped in hide. It's not coddling, it's care. And it's subtle, practical. Later in the day, someone brings you broth, just broth. No chunks, no roots, no mystery pieces. It's warm and salty and almost makes you cry with gratitude. A child offers you a leaf to chew, you accept, and your mouth immediately goes numb. She laughs. The healer nearby nods like he taught her that trick himself. Fringe fact. There's archaeological evidence of a man from 50,000 years ago who lived for years with a major physical disability. So severe he couldn't hunt or contribute in traditional ways. And yet, his community took care of him, fed him, kept him alive. That tells us something important. Compassion isn't a modern invention. Prehistoric people weren't just survival machines. They made space for the weak, for the injured, for you. The next morning your fever breaks, your throat still burns, but you can breathe. You're starving, which you take as a good sign. The healer inspects you, mutters something that sounds suspiciously smug, and hands you a tiny dried beetle. You pop it in your mouth without hesitation. It tastes like old raisins and regret, but you're better. You want to thank him, really thank him. But there's no shared word for that here. So instead, you clean and sharpen one of your better flint scrapers and leave it near his sleeping spot. When he finds it, he doesn't say a word. He just picks it up, tests the edge, and nods once. The next time someone coughs, you help build up the fire. You bring herbs. You chew the leaf before giving it to them, just to make sure it's the right one. You're not a healer, not by a long shot, but now, there's still a debate among historians about how much early humans really understood about disease. Did they recognize contagion? Did they connect symptoms with herbs? Or was it all spiritual guesswork? The truth is likely somewhere in between. Ritual and observation. Trial and error, generations of paying attention. Whatever it was, it worked well enough to get us here. And now it's gotten you through your first Paleolithic flu. You crawl back into your furs that night. Lungs still sore, throat dry, but grateful, not for the beetle tea. Never that. But for the knowledge that in a world without medicine cabinets or thermometers, someone still knew how to keep you alive. You fall asleep, half covered in soot, herbs, and residual shame, but breathing easy. The air smells like wet fur and panic. Migration season has arrived and the cave has become a whirlwind of activity, noise, and slightly violent packing. Your furs are being tugged out from under you, baskets are being tied shut with sinew cord, and someone is yelling, caveman yelling, about forgetting the fire rocks. You blink awake to the sight of a half-dismantled hearth and a very determined proto-dog dragging its bedding across the cave floor with its teeth, like it's preparing for the world's saddest camping trip. Today you're moving, not across the valley, not to a nicer cave with better acoustics. You're migrating. The kind of migration that means packing up everything that isn't nailed to the stone and hauling it across freezing terrain with no wheels, no maps, and zero idea if the next camp is going to be dry, warm, or full of angry badgers. Nobody seems particularly thrilled about it. The clan has waited as long as possible. You've heard the grumbles for weeks, nights colder than they should be, food stores thinning, fewer animals near the stream. The snow comes a little earlier each day, and now it's thick enough to crunch underfoot and swallow small objects whole. The artist's charcoal stash, for instance, is currently buried under 2 feet of it and no one has the energy to dig it out. You ask where you're going, no one answers in words, they just point vaguely southeast and grunt something that probably translates to, away from here before we all die. Historical fact, many Paleolithic groups were semi-nomadic, moving with the seasons to follow migrating herds, access different plant harvests, and avoid the worst of winter. Campsites were rarely permanent. They returned to good locations in cycles, rebuilding shelters and re-establishing territories. Movement wasn't optional, it was survival logic. Your role in this chaotic exodus is predictably humiliating. You're put in charge of carrying bundles of smoked meat, tied in cured hide pouches that leak grease down your legs as you walk. It smells powerful, and you suspect you now rank second only to the meat pile itself on the local predator menu. Packing the cave takes most of the morning. Items are grouped by type and use, flint tools in one pile, furs and sleeping mats in another, dried herbs rolled into tight little bundles and tucked into shoulder bags made from stomach linings. Someone even remembers to bring the old man's grave marker stone. Not all of it, just the piece with his symbol scratched into it. You ask why, and a woman shrugs. He goes with us, she says in a low rasp. Not metaphorical, just matter of fact. By midday, you're on the move. The clan travels in a stretched out line, weaving through snow-laced trees and half-frozen creeks, The hunters lead, checking for tracks and danger. Behind them, the fire tender carries a tightly wrapped ember bundle, kept warm in a hollowed-out antler filled with ash. Losing fire would mean a very short life expectancy, so everyone gives her a wide berth and an unspoken level of fear-based respect. You quickly learn that migrating is not just walking, it's dragging, it's sipping, it's getting tangled in your own gear, while trying not to faceplant into icy puddles. You cross narrow ridges slick with frost. You wade through ankle-deep slush. You climb a slope so steep that at one point you lose a meat pouch and watch it tumble into the abyss, followed by a low shared groan of pure primal disappointment. The snow worsens as the sun lowers. Visibility drops. You're cold, wet, and have had one too many pine needles slap you directly in the mouth. Still, there's a rhythm to the movement. The way the group weaves together like a living braid. People helping each other over routes, passing supplies hand to hand, murmuring low songs that you realise are as much for comfort as for communication. Fringe fact: some researchers believe migration paths were tied not just to food but to memory, landmarks passed down through generations, known by shape or story. That weird split tree, that's where the snow cave collapsed 2 winters ago. The boulder with the red streak? Turn left there? You're not just walking to a destination, you're walking along a memory trail carved by feet, fire and loss. At dusk, you reach the campsite. It's not glamorous. A shallow cliff and overhang, partly sheltered by stone, partly exposed to the wind. There are no walls, no fire pit, just rocks, snow, and the unmistakable scent of something large having passed through recently. Possibly a bear, possibly several, but no one complains. They get to work. A few start digging out a fire circle, others build low windbreaks using stones, sticks, and their own resolve. Furs are laid out over the flattest parts of ground, mats unrolled, bags opened. Someone lights the ember bundle and fans it into life while another scrapes dried pine resin into the flames. The fire catches, sputtering, then finally roaring. You crouch beside it, soaking in the heat like a sinner at confession. Dinner is quick and quiet, mostly meat warmed over sticks, eaten with stiff fingers. No storytelling tonight. Everyone is too tired, too cold, too aware that this temporary haven could become a frozen tomb if the weather turns again. You crawl under a half-unrolled hide next to 3 other people, none of whom seem to care that you smell like smoked meat and feet. The proto-dog flops down beside your hip and starts snoring before you do. You lie there, listening to the wind scraping across the rock, the fire popping in the centre of camp, and the low murmur of someone humming a lullaby in a language that only half exists. Scholars debate whether migration in prehistory was planned like a military campaign or more reactionary, following the signs of scarcity and hoping for the best. But sitting here now, huddled in a makeshift shelter that's mostly fur and optimism, it feels more like instinct than strategy. A push forward when the world says move, because staying still too long means vanishing. Tomorrow the camp will be better, the rocks will be stacked higher. The fire pit deeper, maybe someone will find berries, or new flint, or an animal trail worth following. But tonight, you survived the journey, and that's enough. You're not sure who decided that now would be a good time to fall in love, but apparently your hormones didn't get the memo about frostbite and saber-toothed tigers. Because here you are, standing awkwardly near the edge of camp with half a rabbit in your hands, trying to figure out if accidentally offering it to someone counts as flirting. Spoiler, it doesn't, not in the way you hope. It starts with looks. Glances held a little too long, that kind of eye contact that lingers just past comfortable, and makes you wonder if you've got dirt on your face or if your entire soul is being weighed. You've noticed them before, let's call them Kura, because that's the closest approximation of the name you've overheard, murmured by others. Kura is quiet, observant, and somehow always has their furs on the right way. While you still can't tie your belt without tripping over yourself, they're not a leader, not the loudest, not even the strongest. But they know things. How to spot edible fungus under the snow. How to whistle bark to scare off scavenger birds. How to skin a rabbit with 3 precise cuts while still having time to roll their eyes at your clumsy attempt to make a fire pit. They're calm, capable, slightly intimidating, and they laughed at one of your jokes, so obviously you're in love. Now, dating in the Stone Age isn't exactly candlelight dinners and awkward text messages. There's no language for "can I buy you a drink?" or "are we a thing now?" or "just checking, is this a date or are we hunting?" There's just time, proximity, shared tasks, a subtle reshuffling of who sits next to whom during meals, who offers an extra scrap of meat, who helps tie your sleeping furs tighter at night when the wind cuts deep. You begin spending more time near Kura, subtly at first, helping with firewood, sitting nearby when tools are being sharpened, offering a cleaned fish you definitely did not catch yourself. They accept, say nothing. But the next morning your flint scraper has been retied with fresh sinew. That's something, right? Historical fact. While we often picture prehistoric relationships as transactional, or based purely on reproduction, there's increasing evidence that emotional bonds, partnership, and even romantic attachment existed long before formal society. Burial sites have shown couples buried together, hands touching. Some anthropologists argue that pair bonding, choosing a long-term mate, was part of how humans developed stronger social cohesion and survival advantage. But love back then wasn't private, it was clan business. The others notice. Of course they do, they always do. And naturally gossip follows. It's not cruel, just curious. There's a particular smirk one woman gives you whenever Kura walks by. The proto-dog seems to have picked a side and now sleeps exclusively on Kura's furs like a furry endorsement. The artist draws two handprints next to each other on the wall one evening, and someone coughs dramatically in your direction. You try not to read too much into it. But then Kura hands you a small pouch made of softened hide. Inside are 3 beads, 1 shell, 1 carved bone, and 1 made from smoothed wood. It's the kind of gift you've seen exchanged between others before. Not a declaration, just a signal. You give back a small flint blade you carved yourself, your best one. Not fancy, but clean, sharp, practical. They accept it with a nod that says, "Okay, you're officially something." There's no label, no ceremony. You don't move into a separate cave or carve your names into a mammoth tusk. But you begin to share things. A water pouch, a sleeping mat, sometimes a joke that no one else seems to understand. You work together more often, gathering roots, preparing hides. Once, when a storm catches you outside camp, you and Kura take shelter under a ledge, wrapped in the same cloak pressed together for warmth. It's the first time your skin has touched without gloves or distance or an accidental trip into the fire pit. And that moment, quiet, breathless, slightly damp, is when it hits you that this is not just about convenience or warmth. It's about choosing. In a world where nothing is permanent, where food spoils and fire burns out and people vanish in the snow, choosing to share your time with someone means everything. Fringe fact, some ancient cultures may have used scent to attract mates, wearing aromatic herbs, rubbing animal fat mixed with plants into their skin. There's even evidence from early burial sites that certain flowers or sweet-smelling plants were placed with bodies, possibly as a kind of prehistoric perfume or offering. So yes, your habit of chewing mint leaves before sitting near Kura might actually be historically accurate flirting. Still, relationships in this world are practical too. Romance doesn't exempt you from work. Kura expects you to pull your weight, and you do, desperately trying not to mess up during joint tasks. You both go fishing together one day and actually catch something, which you take as a clear sign of cosmic approval. Later, while preparing hides, Kura leans over, touches your shoulder briefly, and mutters something about your stitching looking less tragic than last time. You're pretty sure that's love? Of course, there's no guarantee it'll last. This isn't a world built for forever. Sometimes people leave, sometimes they die, sometimes they just shift into other roles in the web of the group. You know all that. But still, you sit beside them when the fire's low, and the clan is quiet, shoulder to shoulder under the same fur cloak, watching the sparks float into the dark, and you let yourself hope. Scholars argue over whether prehistoric humans were monogamous, polygamous, or entirely flexible. Evidence suggests it varied widely, some groups favouring long-term pair bonds, others more communal. But what's clear is that relationships weren't just biological, they were social, emotional, connected to survival, yes, but also to meaning. That night Kura reaches for your hand while you're sleeping. Not a big gesture, not even intentional maybe, just fingers brushing fingers under the furs, but you stay still, awake, letting that one point of contact tether you to something warmer than the fire and older than any language. And for the first time in a long while, you don't dream of predators, you dream of staying. There's tension in the air, And it's not the fun kind, like when two people are obviously about to start a relationship but refuse to admit it. No, this is big energy tension, the kind that makes the fire seem quieter, the laughter more forced, the silences more meaningful. Even the proto-dog's been pacing, which you didn't think was possible, because that thing usually sleeps 23 hours a day and eats for the other one. It starts small, as always. Grook, the guy who previously tried to pass off a dead badger as a heroic hunting kill, has been more vocal lately, more visible. He struts, he gestures broadly during story time, he interrupts the fire tender mid-sentence, which is as close to blasphemy as this clan allows. You don't even like the fire tender all that much, but when Grook cuts her off to brag about his spear-throwing skills, which are mediocre at best, you catch yourself rolling your eyes so hard you nearly dislocate your soul. Grook's louder now, more than usual. He moves like someone who's convinced he's in charge before anyone else has agreed, which is awkward because the alpha is very much still alive, still functional and still very capable of bench-pressing Grook with one hand and a mammoth leg in the other. But here's the thing, power doesn't always stick. It has to be earned again and again, especially in the wild, where respect can be as fragile as fire during a windstorm. And right now, Grook smells weakness, or opportunity. The current alpha, while still physically strong, has been quieter lately. Older. He watches more, speaks less. It could be strategy, or it could be fatigue. Either way, Grook has noticed. Historical fact, leadership in Paleolithic societies likely wasn't formalised like thrones and crowns. It was often based on reputation, who could provide, protect, make decisions that led to survival. Elders might have held power through knowledge, while younger, fitter members challenged through demonstration. No laws, no elections, just presence and proof, which means the moment is coming, you can feel it. And sure enough, one evening right before sunset, it happens. The clan is gathered around the fire, chewing through dried strips of meat and tubers that taste like roasted boredom. The artist is drawing quietly near the cave wall. Children chase each other with sticks. Then Grook stands, not slowly, not subtly. He stands like he's making a point, back straight, chest puffed, jaw tight. He holds his spear, not raised, but angled just enough to say this isn't a game anymore. Everyone falls silent. The alpha looks up slowly from where he's kneeling near the fire. He doesn't flinch, doesn't even blink. He just meets Grook's gaze, like he's been expecting this exact moment since the leaves started falling. Grook grunts, short and sharp, and gestures at the alpha's chest, then at the meat pile, then at the spear. You don't need subtitles. The message is clear. You're done. I'll take it from here. No one moves. Challenges like this aren't common, but they're not taboo either. This is how balance stays intact. When strength wanes, when leadership falters, someone steps up and says, I can do better. And if they're right, the clan shifts. If they're wrong, well, the alpha stands, slowly, calmly, the way old trees do. His face is expressionless, but his body is stone. He doesn't raise his voice, he just steps forward until he and Grook are a breath apart. No armour, no theatrics, just two men with spears, dirt under their nails, and the weight of 100 winters behind them. Fringe fact, among many tribal societies, leadership transitions are ritualised in subtle ways. Challenges aren't just brawls, they're performances, social negotiations. Sometimes it's a contest of strength, sometimes of wisdom, sometimes of who can remain silent the longest without flinching. Power is fluid, but it's earned, not claimed. This is not a brawl, not yet. This is a stare-down of ancient proportions. You can hear someone whisper a prayer behind you, probably to the cave spirits or the sky, or just to anyone listening. Then the alpha does something that silences even the proto-dog. He sits back down, not in surrender, not in fear. He just lets it go. Grook stands there, stunned, waiting for something more. A fight, a lunge, but it doesn't come. The alpha only gestures toward the meat, then toward the fire, then waves a hand across the group. Go ahead then, lead. Grook blinks, and for a terrifying second you think it worked. But then someone laughs, not a belly laugh, not loud, just a low knowing chuckle from the edge of the fire circle. One of the women, who hunts better than most of the men, she shakes her head. Then another person snorts. A third rolls their eyes. And just like that, the spell is broken, because everyone saw it. Grook had to challenge, but the alpha didn't have to respond. He didn't rise to the bait, didn't waste his energy. He chose the group over the fight, and that somehow was more powerful than winning. Gruk sits down, not defeated exactly, but not triumphant either. The firekeeper throws a log onto the flames with more force than necessary, and the conversation resumes, louder this time, like a current has shifted and everyone can breathe again. The alpha never speaks of it. The next morning he sharpens spears, helps repair a firstling, and jokes with a child like nothing happened. But his eyes are sharper now, watchful, not out of fear, out of understanding. He knows power is temporary, and he knows Gruk will try again someday, but not today. Debates among anthropologists continue about how early human social hierarchies worked. Were they democratic, authoritarian, rotational? The answer is probably yes to all of it, depending on the group, the climate, the crisis. Leadership was adaptable, it had to be. You don't run a community on ego when a wrong decision can mean starvation. You think about all this later that night, curled in your furs beside Kura, watching the fire crackle. The clan breathes easier now, but things have shifted, not broken, just bent. A reminder that even in a world without written laws or courtrooms, power still circulates, and people still want more of it. But here's the thing they forget. Survival is the real authority. Not strength, not status, just waking up every day alive. That's the only title that matters. There's a sound you've never heard before. It's high-pitched and erratic, like a bird fighting a windstorm. But when you turn to look, it's just one of the children sprinting through the slush, completely naked and covered in what is probably soup. You blink, then another one follows, shrieking with delight, face smeared in soot, clutching a stick shaped vaguely like a snake. You duck instinctively as they tear past you, nearly upending a carefully stacked pile of kindling. Ah yes, parenting in the Paleolithic. You don't have kids, not here, not now, not ever, yet, but you're surrounded by them. Small humans everywhere, sticky, chaotic, louder than mammoths, and seemingly powered by unlimited energy and sheer audacity. There are at least half a dozen running around camp at any given time, ranging in age from potato with legs to mouthy teenager who thinks they invented war. And despite the absolute lawlessness of their behaviour, they're weirdly competent. You see a toddler pick up a flint flake without slicing open their hand. A 5-year-old butchers a fish with more grace than you have after 3 weeks of practice. An 8-year-old helps repair a hide sling, double-checking the knots without being asked. You, meanwhile, spent the morning trying to make a rope from plant fibre and ended up tying your own ankle to a tree. Children in the clan aren't babied. They're included. From the moment they can wobble upright, they're involved in everything, gathering herbs, grinding roots, fetching water, cleaning tools. They watch the adults constantly, and unlike you, they pick things up fast. It's unnerving. You suspect half of them could survive on their own in the woods for a week, while you die trying to climb a tree for a bird egg and fall out of it immediately. Historical fact, many modern anthropologists studying forager societies have observed that children learn through observation and imitation rather than formal instruction. They aren't taught in the school sense. They watch, try, fail, try again. And because they're integrated into every aspect of life, they grow up competent in skills adults depend on. That's exactly what you're seeing here. Education by immersion. Of course, there's still chaos. A toddler is trying to eat dirt. Someone else has drawn a mammoth on the side of the proto-dog using ash and spit. 2 older boys are locked in an epic stick duel that has already taken out 3 bowls and someone's leg hair. But it's not unsupervised chaos. It's lightly curated. The adults glance over occasionally, assess whether the behaviour will result in death, and if not, let it continue. It's a system, not elegant, but effective. One of the elders, a woman with skin like old leather and a voice like gravel, gathers the youngest into a circle near the fire and starts telling a story. You recognise a few of the gestures, something about the son being swallowed by a wolf and spat out again. The children listen, eyes wide. Some sit quietly, others fidget, chew on sticks, or pick their noses with intense focus, but they all absorb it. You notice one girl sitting slightly apart from the others, holding a broken bird skull. She's carefully threading twine through the eye sockets, creating a kind of charm. You ask her what it is for, and she says in a perfectly calm voice, "It scares away bad dreams." Then she hands it to you like a gift. You accept it like it's the most valuable artifact in the world, which, given your current living conditions, it kind of is. Fringe fact, archaeologists have found small artifacts in prehistoric campsites, figurines, beads, carved bones, that may have belonged to or been made by children. These weren't just toys. Some may have been part of the early ritual or spiritual practice, others were learning tools. Either way, kids weren't separate from the cultural life of the group, they were part of it. You tried to help with the children one afternoon, which is, in hindsight, a terrible decision. You offer to show them how to sharpen a stick, and within minutes they've turned your demo into a full-blown twig war. You are now covered in scratches. At least 3 have wandered off, and one is asking you, with the innocent curiosity of a tiny sociopath, whether eating fire will make his eyes glow. You direct him firmly to the healer, and then consider quitting your babysitting career immediately. But it's not all chaos. Later, you see a young boy gently brush ash off the sleeping fur of the proto-dog. A girl offers a piece of dried fruit to an older woman who looks too tired to stand. A toddler waddles over to the fire tender and hands her a single pebble, then claps with glee when she accepts it like it's gold. These kids are more than noise. They're the next generation of this fragile little society, and they're being shaped by it every day, by the stories, the chores, the meals, the rhythms of shared survival. You start to see how the clan makes space for them, not just physically, but spiritually. The walls are full of handprints, some so small you can barely see the fingers. Tools are made in miniature for practice. Tasks are slowed down so little hands can help. Oh, there's no when you're older. It's try now. And if you fail, try again. Scholars debate how much childhood meant in ancient times. Was it recognised as a distinct phase of life, or were children simply mini-adults from the moment they could walk? The answer is probably both. Childhood here isn't protected in the modern sense, but it is respected. You're allowed to grow, to try, to stumble without being thrown aside. Even you, the most awkward adopted member of this little tribe, have been given time to become less useless. You spend the evening watching the children play a strange game involving bones, stones, and complicated rules no adult seems to understand. Kura sits beside you, watching with a smile that's both fond and exhausted. You lean in and whisper, "Do we ever get good at this?" Kura shrugs. "They grow anyway," they say simply. And that's the truth of it. In this world of snow and fire, predators and protein, the children grow. They fall and rise and learn to nap flint and dodge spears and stir soup without setting the furs on fire. They'll be the ones to carry the stories, the tools, the beads, the handprints. And maybe, if you're lucky, they'll remember you. The weird one who showed up one winter and learned how not to die. You look at the charm the girl gave you, a bird skull tied with sinew, and hang it on the wall beside your bedroll. For the first time in your life, you kind of believe it might actually work. The air in the cave is thick with smoke and something else, something sweeter, richer, almost spicy. Not food, not pho. It's anticipation. The kind that gathers in people's throats before something important. You're not sure what's happening yet, but everyone is acting a little different tonight. The usual noise of chores and fire maintenance is quieter. People are grooming themselves, straightening their furs, adding beads or feathers to their hair. You even spot the proto-dog with what appears to be a stick balanced carefully on its back like a makeshift accessory. High fashion, Paleolithic edition. Kura pulls you aside and hands you a pouch of red ochre. You stare at it like it might explode. "Paint," they explain, as if that clarifies anything. Then they smear a line across your cheek and walk off. "Right. Okay. Face paint." You resist the urge to eat it, or just to see what it tastes like, because this is still a learning process for you, and instead awkwardly mark your own forehead with a thumbprint. It feels ceremonial. It also feels like you have dirt on your face, which is not exactly a departure from your usual look. As dusk falls, the mood shifts from daily survival into something else entirely. The fire is built bigger than usual, and the walls are glowing with it, revealing every drawing, every smudge, every layered mark of history. Someone has arranged bones, clean and white, into a ring around the central fire pit. Not ominous, just artful, symbolic. Tonight, you learn, is not about hunting or gathering or fixing your hide boots for the 10th time. Tonight is for something more ancient than all of that. Tonight is for expression. One by one, clan members bring out items they've made. Paintings, beads, carvings, music. Not to trade, not to sell, just to show, to share, to be witnessed. It's the Stone Age equivalent of an art fair, but instead of booths and lattes, there's moss tea and a teenager juggling rocks. The artist is already adding to the wall, a new series of animals drawn in dark charcoal, surrounded by dots and lines that seem to pulse in the firelight. His fingers are blackened to the knuckle. He works fast, with sure movements, only pausing to blow ochre dust onto the wall from a hollowed reed. The result is a glowing handprint, like a ghost pressed into the stone. You realise that none of this is for decoration. It's communication. Not literal, maybe not even clear, but meaningful. You sit beside a woman stringing together a necklace of tiny, polished teeth. You ask what animal they're from. She shrugs. Found them, she says, and keeps threading. That's the whole point. Meaning made from leftovers. Culture, born from scraps. Historical fact, many archaeologists believe Paleolithic people weren't just survival-focused, they were deeply symbolic. Beads, cave art, burial rituals, all suggest a society that thought about beauty, about story, about self-expression. Sites like Chauvet and Lascaux weren't just doodles, they were complex, layered murals that may have been added to over generations. This was not just survival, this was being human. A young boy steps forward next and shows off his creation, a small carving made from bone, shaped like a strange four-legged creature with an exaggerated snout. You can't tell if it's supposed to be a mammoth, a bear, or a terrifying hybrid of both, but everyone claps by thudding their palms against the ground or the sides of their legs. Sound here is not always from mouths, it's in movement. Rhythm. Then comes the music. Someone picks up a hollowed bone and blows into it, producing a sound somewhere between a whistle and a bird being surprised. A second person joins in with a rhythm tapped on a log using smooth stones. The beat is simple, repetitive, and oddly hypnotic. Heads begin to sway. One woman starts to hum. Others join, creating a layered chorus of low tones and high notes, winding through the air like smoke. There's no melody in the modern sense, no lyrics, just sounds that come from deep in the chest, in the gut, from something older than language. And then they start to dance. Not with choreography, not like a planned thing, it just happens. Feet stomp, hands clap. Someone twirls with their arms raised. Another joins in, a child copies them, falling over and laughing, only to be scooped up and spun around again. You feel it in your ribs, the pulse, the vibration of joy that doesn't need to be explained. You're pulled into the circle before you can protest. Kura's hand finds yours. You stumble, spin, laugh at your own awkwardness. There's no pressure to get it right. There is no right, just movement. You remember what it's like to have fun without needing to post about it. To exist in a moment where nothing is captured and everything is experienced. Fringe fact. The oldest known musical instruments are flutes carved from bird bone and mammoth ivory, dating back more than 40,000 years. Which means while someone in your timeline was inventing the wheel or thinking deeply about void, someone else was over here vibing with a bone flute and inventing the rave. Eventually the circle settles. People lie back on furs, sweaty and glowing, laughter still trailing off into breathless gasps. The proto-dog is sprawled on its back, legs twitching in what you assume is a dance-related seizure. You feel lighter, warmer, not just from the fire but from something else. Connection maybe, community, that weird buzz of having done something together, even if it wasn't for food or shelter or survival. Someone passes around a drink made from fermented berries. It smells like vinegar and tastes like bad decisions. You sip anyway. It burns going down and suddenly everything is even funnier. Someone burps, someone else starts a slow wordless chant, the sky outside the cave is pitch black, but inside the world is still alive, still moving. There's still scholarly debate about the true purpose of early artistic expression. Was it spiritual, social, educational? Maybe all of the above. What's clear is that creativity has always been essential to the human experience. Not an afterthought, but a core feature. A way of processing, remembering, dreaming. And tonight, you're part of that. You sit quietly watching the fire reflect off the wall, where your own shaky handprint sits beside others. The beat still echoes in your chest. Kura leans against your shoulder, humming softly. You don't need to speak. There's nothing to say that hasn't already been danced or sung or carved into the cave. For one night at least, life is more than survival. It's celebration. It starts with a peer drip, one tiny innocent droplet from the lip of the overhang, plopping down onto the stone floor in the middle of the night. No one notices. The fire crackles softly, the proto-dog is chasing dream rabbits, and most of the clan is buried deep beneath their furs. blissfully unaware that the weather is about to turn into a petty, vengeful god. Then come more drips, drip, 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 and by the time the proto-dog shifts restlessly and someone rolls over with a grunt, it's no longer a drip. It's a patter, a splatter. A chorus of cold misery sliding from the heavens directly into your temporary little patch of shelter. You wake up to a cold foot, not yours, someone else's. You shove it away and open your eyes to find that your bedding has turned into a soggy sponge. The fire is still going, but it's flickering erratically now, wind sneaking in through gaps in the rocks. Rain or melting snow. Who can tell anymore? Is finding every crack, every crevice, every flat surface and turning it into a puddle. The storm has arrived, and it's not just rain. The temperature drops so fast that your breath becomes fog even inside the cave. The wet furs freeze in place. Tools left outside the shelter are now coated in a thin layer of glistening ice. Someone curses as they step on a frozen stone, immediately slipping and knocking over a basket of firewood. You sit up and immediately regret it. Your back feels like it's been used as a mammoth sled, and your hair is dripping onto your shoulders like you just lost a wrestling match with a waterfall. Then the wind comes. It howls like a living thing, a scream pulled from the lungs of a vengeful sky god. It snakes into the cave, lifting furs, blowing ash into your eyes, scattering beads and blubber, knocking over carefully arranged bundles. The proto-dog, no longer dreaming peacefully, bolts upright and lets out a bark so confused it actually echoes. Outside the world is grey. Trees bend under the pressure. Snow melts into slush, then freezes into jagged ice. The sky is thick and colourless, like the inside of a wet skull. You think longingly of the firelit art night you just had, back when the worst problem was drinking something fermented and questionable. Now you're ankle deep in cave soup. Historical fact, evidence from Paleolithic sites shows that climate fluctuations, especially in Ice Age Europe, were rapid and severe. Some areas could swing from relatively temperate to frozen wastelands in a matter of days. Shelters had to be temporary but resilient. And surviving the storm wasn't about comfort, it was about endurance. The clan gets to work immediately. This isn't their first flood rodeo. Furs are pulled down from the walls and resecured tighter. Fire pits are dug deeper, stones stacked around the base to keep the flames alive. Someone runs in this weather, and returns with a load of moss and pine bark to help seal up the edges of the cave. Water is channeled away using split logs and shallow trenches. No one talks, everyone just moves. You try to help and immediately get assigned the world's worst job, slop duty. A few others and you are tasked with bailing out the accumulating water using bowls, broken shells, and a very inventive use of an old hollowed-out gourd. It's not elegant, but it works. Sort of. You feel like a medieval peasant fighting a flood with spoons, and then the leak starts. Near the back of the cave, the wall begins to trickle, just a line of moisture at first, but then more. Like the rock is sweating. Someone yells. Tools and bedding are quickly yanked out of the way. The healer throws his satchel of herbs to someone else, then begins desperately repacking his clay pots into a basket as the trickle becomes a steady stream. A miniature waterfall is now pouring down the wall. The proto-dog retreats further into the pile of hides and refuses to come out. Fringe fact, archaeologists at certain prehistoric cave sites have found evidence of charcoal layers, flood-turned sediment, and temporary abandonment, meaning even favourite campsites weren't immune to the forces of nature. People came back, sure, but sometimes you had to pack up and go, and sometimes nature just didn't care how sentimental you felt about your favourite sleeping rock. At this point, you're soaked to the soul. Your knees are muddy, your fingers are wrinkled, your nose is permanently running, and your boots squelch when you walk. You take one break, just one, leaning against a rock to catch your breath, and a child immediately dumps a bowl of ice-cold runoff down the back of your neck by accident. You scream, they laugh, you consider inventing exile just for them. Kura finds you at some point and hands you a steaming cup of pine needle tea. You don't even like it, but you gulp it down anyway, savouring the heat. Their expression is grim though. This isn't just a bad storm, it's the kind that could drive them to abandon the site entirely. If the weather doesn't let up in the next day or two, it'll be time to move again. Tonight no one sleeps deeply. The fire is kept high and wide with someone always feeding it. The wind shrieks through the mouth of the cave, and the wetness never quite leaves your bones. You lie awake, curled around your waterlogged bedding, watching the shadows ripple on the cave walls like ghosts. You think of the last camp, the one you left behind, and the one before that. Places are starting to blur together now, tied only by the people you survive them with. Scholarly debates continue about just how settled early humans were. Did they return to favourite camps in seasonal cycles? Or did they keep moving, always adapting, never staying long enough for roots? It likely depended on climate, geography, resources. But one thing is certain, comfort was always temporary, and sometimes survival meant leaving behind even the places that felt like home. By the second morning the rain stops, the sky is still heavy. But the wind has slowed to a moody hiss. The water has receded from most of the cave, and the fire pit is dry again, though now surrounded by a moat of sad ashes and soggy logs. Someone opens the gourd drum and starts tapping a slow beat. Not a celebration, just a heartbeat. A reminder. People begin to laugh again, cautiously. You step outside and see a rare sliver of blue sky peeking through the cloud cover, like a wink from a reluctant sun. And you realise something strange. The storm was awful, but surviving it with everyone, bailing, sweating, swearing, sharing hot pine tea and dirty jokes, that was kind of wonderful. Not because it was easy, but because it was together. It happens like this. Someone spots smoke, not your smoke, not the familiar, cosy plume that rises from your own fire pit every morning, like a sleepy hand waving hello to the sky. This smoke is different, thin, wispy, distant, rising from just beyond the tree line on the far side of the valley. The moment it's noticed, the entire mood of the clan shifts. Voices drop, heads turn, conversations die mid-word. Even the proto-dog, who has been enthusiastically chewing a stick for the better part of an hour, stops and growls softly. No one needs to say anything. You all know what this means, you're not alone. The clan doesn't panic exactly, but you can feel the tension crawl in like cold through a crack in the stone. Eyes narrow, spears get casually checked, adjusted, placed a little closer to hand. No one moves toward the smoke, but everyone rearranges themselves subtly, like the walls of the cave are being redrawn in real time. Strangers. Out here, that word carries weight. Could mean new allies, trade, mates, maybe even songs and stories you've never heard before. Or it could mean danger, theft, disease, death. There's no guest etiquette in the Paleolithic. No, let's just talk it out. Trust is earned very slowly. Suspicion, on the other hand, shows up fully formed with its own hide blanket and travel pouch. Historical fact is, while prehistoric groups were small and often isolated, they weren't completely cut off. There's evidence of long-distance trade in beads, shells and stone tools, items that could have passed through multiple hands and hundreds of miles. This implies some kind of structured interaction, but how friendly those interactions were, that's still up for debate. The Alpha sends 2 scouts, quiet ones, both with sharp eyes and even sharper knives. Kura is one of them. You try to protest, subtly, but they give you a look that says, "I've done this before, stop being dramatic," and they're gone into the trees before you can finish worrying. The rest of the day is thick with nerves. No one talks much, no singing, no story time. The artist pauses work on the latest wall painting. Even the children are subdued, sensing the shift. You do your part, collecting firewood, checking the edge of the shelter for weak spots, but your mind stays out there, with Kura, with the smoke, with whatever's waiting beyond that hill. It's nearly dusk when they return. 2 small figures stepping out of the trees like ghosts. The whole camp rises in unison, every body tensed, every hand ready. But there's no panic in their movements, just alertness, purpose, and something else. They're not alone. Trailing behind them at a careful distance are 3 people you've never seen before. One man, tall and wide, wearing furs that hang like curtains and carrying a spear longer than your leg. One woman, slight but steady, with a child pressed close to her hip. The child is maybe 4, maybe 5, with big eyes and a dirty face clutching what looks like a carved bone animal in one small fist. The strangers stop at the edge of camp, and then everyone just waits. No one speaks. Eventually the Alpha steps forward, slowly. He doesn't raise his voice, does not raise his weapon. He places a rock, small, smooth, clearly selected, in the space between him and the strangers. An offering, a symbol, a test. The tall man looks at it, looks back at the Alpha, then places his own object down. A small piece of red-streaked flint. Not sharpened, not dangerous, just placed. Tension breaks slightly. This is how it works. Not words, not declarations, objects, things with weight, with meaning. If either side had dropped a blade or raised a voice, this could have ended in blood. But instead, the conversation begins with the stones. Fringe fact, some anthropologists believe that object exchanges, what we now call trade, may have originally evolved not for economic reasons but for social ones. To build peace, to signal intention, to say I'm not here to take, I'm here to share. These weren't marketplaces. They were slow dances between groups who knew just how dangerous the alternative could be. Eventually the strangers are invited in, carefully. They're offered places by the fire, separate, but warm, not far from you. The woman gives the child a strip of dried meat. He gnaws on it silently, still clutching his bone animal. The tall man stays alert, his eyes never leaving the rest of the camp. You're watching him too, because that's what everyone's doing, watching, measuring, waiting. They don't talk much, they speak a dialect similar to your clan's, but twisted at the edges, harder vowels, different rhythms. It takes time to understand them. But slowly, with gestures and shared meals and cautious glances, the walls begin to lower. The proto-dog is the first to cross over. Naturally, it walks straight up to the child, sniffs the bone animal, then flops down beside him, like they've been best friends for centuries. The child laughs, bright and sudden, and that sound somehow makes everyone breathe again. Over the next few days, the groups interact more. Tools are compared, hunting techniques discussed. There's an awkward moment when one of your clan members offers a basket of smoked fish, and the strangers respond by offering nothing, prompting a tense standoff that's resolved by a quiet apology and an even quieter exchange of beads. Kura tells you later that the strangers have been wandering for weeks. Their old shelter collapsed during a landslide. They're low on food, low on gear, and trying to make it through the season without losing more people. It's not a request, not exactly, but it's clear they need help. So now the real question hovers over the fire like smoke. Do they stay? There's no vote, no formal decision-making, but you see it in the way the group shifts. The way people test out sleeping arrangements, share portions, carve more tools. Slowly space is made, not forced, just found. Scholars argue about whether prehistoric groups were territorial or welcoming. The truth is likely both. When resources were tight, strangers meant risk, but they also meant knowledge, alliance, even genetics. Some groups merged, others stayed separate. It was always about survival first, but survival as you're learning is often about who you choose to survive with. That night, the fire burns high. Not a celebration, just warmth. You sit beside Kura, who leans into you slightly. Across the fire, the tall man watches. You nod. He nods back. That's it. That's enough. The child sleeps curled around the proto-dog, their little bone animal clutched to their chest. The woman, his mother you assume, rests nearby, finally relaxing enough to let her head fall back against a pack of furs. The smoke still rises into the sky, but now it rises together. You wake to the sound of something snapping, sharp, quick, like a bone breaking clean under pressure. It echoes across the half-frozen landscape and jerks you upright before your brain has even caught up. The proto-dog is already on its feet, hackles raised, head low, and from the way everyone else is rising, reaching for spears and stones, you know it wasn't someone stepping on a twig. It's a trap, or rather, it was a trap. You follow the group, still shaking off sleep, to the edge of the woods. There, half buried in snow and leaves, is one of the clan's snares, a simple bent sapling pulled tight and anchored with twine. Or it was anchored. Now it hangs limp, twine cut, bait missing. The trigger stick snapped in half. Whatever passed through here didn't just get lucky. It knew what the trap was, and it dismantled it fast. Something smarter than a deer. Something with hands. This is when the murmuring starts. Whispers ripple through the group, low and rhythmic. The older members make gestures with their fingers, shapes that mean warding off bad spirits or inviting good ones, depending on who you ask. One of the children starts to cry, and no one tells them to stop. Because for the first time since you arrived in this world of flint and fur and functional chaos, the clan looks afraid. Not afraid like when the saber-tooth came sniffing around. Not the cold, quiet tension of weather or hunger. This fear is older. 'Tis cultural. The word is spoken eventually. You don't understand it at first. It's not a word you've heard often. Just a soft syllable passed from one tongue to another, and the moment you ask what it means, Kura answers in a whisper. Others not like us. Historical fact. Anthropologists theorize that early human groups would have been aware of each other, sometimes friendly, sometimes hostile. Encounters between Homo sapiens and other hominin species like Neanderthals or Denisovans likely happened in scattered regions across Eurasia. But even among the same species, different groups developed unique tool sets, diets, and social behaviours. Meeting someone who wasn't one of yours could mean wonder, or war. Back at the camp, the mood has changed. The visiting strangers, the ones who joined your group after the landslide, are visibly unsettled too. The tall man paces near the fire, gripping his spear tighter than necessary. His child stays close to his side, no longer playing with the proto-dog, just wide-eyed and silent. Everyone is on edge. Kura brings you aside. There are stories, Bon, they begin, squatting near the fire, drawing lines in the ash with a stick. Old stories. Of ones who steal food, steal tools, sometimes people, never speak, never show faces. You blink. You mean like other clans? Kura shakes their head. No, wrong clans. Clans that don't belong. The line between folklore and reality has always been thin in prehistoric life, and tonight it's paper thin. You ask if these others are real. Kura just shrugs. Not real until they are, they say flatly. Fringe fact. Archaeological digs have unearthed strange anomalies, tools or bones that don't quite match the expected pattern for that region or time period. Some suggest contact between groups with very different technologies. Others theorize they were left behind by unknown hominin populations we still haven't classified. The idea that early people encountered things they couldn't explain isn't a myth. It's science waiting to catch up. A scouting party is assembled at dawn. 5 members, including the Alpha, the tall stranger and Kura. You volunteer and are immediately told in the gentlest way possible to stay and protect the fire. It's not an insult, it's protocol. If something happens, someone has to make sure the children, the elders, the less mobile survive. But waiting is worse than walking into danger. You stay busy, tightening the lashings on the roof shelter, feeding the fire, checking every supply pouch. The snow begins to fall again, this time in soft, lazy flakes, as if even the weather is pretending to be innocent. Hours pass. When the scouts return, the mood is grim. They carry no meat, no trophies. Just the head of a Sibir, your clan style, tied to a branch. It was stuck in a tree, left there on purpose, clean, unbloodied. A message. The artist takes it and presses it into wet ash. Then prints the shape onto a flat stone. A record. A warning. Then the spearhead is broken and burned. That night, no one dances. No one tells stories. Instead, an inventory is taken. Quietly, methodically. Each blade, each bundle leaves, each register's tool is checked and rechecked. You didn't realise how many things had gone missing until they were all laid out. A scraping stone, 2 sharpened bone awls, a pouch of dried mushrooms, a small carving made for a child. Gone, and no one left the camp. The proto-dog growls again that night. Low, continuous, its eyes locked on the cave entrance. You sit up, knife in hand, scanning the dark. But there's nothing. No sound, no movement. Just the snow falling, and the knowing. The next morning, fresh tracks are found in the snow. Not animal, not barefoot either. Human, but strange. The spacing is wrong, the depth too deep, like someone carrying something heavy or limping. The stride isn't familiar. Someone says it might be a malformed foot, another says it wasn't one of us at all. The discussion doesn't last long, no one wants to admit the truth. Someone was here, watching. Scholars argue endlessly about how violent prehistoric groups were toward outsiders. Some camps show evidence of cooperative interaction, even interbreeding. Others show signs of trauma, fractures, skull wounds, burnt remains, that suggest the opposite. It likely varied by time and place, but one thing seems consistent. When resources were tight, strangers were a threat. By the 3rd day, the clan agrees to move. Again. Not far, just enough to break the pattern, to reassert control. A place with better visibility, higher ground. Somewhere harder to sneak up on. You pack quickly with none of the usual jokes or last-minute drama. The firekeeper prepares a new ember bundle in silence. Even the proto-dog walks with its tail low. As you leave, you look back at the cave. The walls still bear the handprints, the art, the smoke marks. But now, it also bears the knowledge that someone else knows this place too, and maybe they're still watching. Maybe they were never far. Maybe we were the story they whispered about in their own language, in their own dark, far-off shelter. Maybe everyone is someone else's monster. The new camp is higher up, a rocky ledge above a narrow stream that cuts through the forest like a silver thread. It's harder to reach, harder to leave, and frankly harder to like. But it's defensible, that's the point. Visibility in every direction. Trees are thinner here, the wind more persistent, the cold more biting. But the Alpha made the call and no one argued. After the incident with the footprints and the missing tools, caution has become the clan's new religion. You spend the first day building windbreaks. The rock face gives you one wall. You spend the next several hours trying to make 3 more out of bent branches, moss, and wishful thinking. The proto-dog tries to help by stealing your binding twine and using it as a chew toy. You manage to get one corner stable enough to lean against without it collapsing, which, in caveman carpentry, counts as luxury real estate. Everyone works, no one complains. This is not a joyful move, it's not a migration for food or a seasonal shift. This is retreat. And people can feel that. The mood is thinner here, just like the air. You find yourself glancing over your shoulder more, even when you're sure no one is following. Especially when you're sure. Still, survival marches on. Water is easy, clear and fast-flowing. You don't even have to boil it, though the healer insists on adding herbs to everything just in case. Food, though, is scarcer. The animals know this ridge. They smell the smoke. They stay low, in the valleys and brush. Traps are harder to set on rocky ground. You spend a full afternoon making a pitfall snare that just ends up catching Kura's foot. The moment of shared profanity is possibly the only laugh anyone has that day. Historical fact, Paleolithic humans didn't always get to pick the best location. Sometimes safety outweighed convenience. There's evidence of temporary shelters in rough terrain, caves halfway up cliffs, camps in narrow passes, places that offered visibility and defensibility but little else. These weren't permanent homes, they were temporary shields, and temporary is the right word, because even as you settle in, you can tell this isn't a place anyone wants to stay long. Nights are colder here, the wind howls constantly, cutting through layers of fur and hide like it has something personal against you. The fire burns faster and needs more feeding. Sparks whip sideways and sting exposed skin. Every sound feels sharper, snaps of branches, rustles of leaves, the occasional shriek of a distant animal, or something worse. You barely sleep, and when you do, your dreams are full of shadows, hands reaching through cracks, faces just out of sight, a voice you can't understand repeating a single syllable over and over until it sounds like your own name. Even the proto-dog isn't sleeping well. It paces the perimeter at night, tail stiff, ears twitching at every gust of wind. One night it lets out a growl so low it vibrates through the floor. You sit up immediately, knife already in hand, but there's nothing. Just dark trees. Just silence. Still, you keep watch for the rest of the night. The others feel it too. You can tell by the way no one lingers at the edge of camp. How conversations cut off when the wind shifts. How every movement is more deliberate, more cautious. The Alpha is quieter than usual. Kura has taken to drawing symbols in the dirt just outside the shelter every night before sleep. You don't ask what they mean. You just watch and start drawing your own. Simple lines, crosses, loops, a vocabulary of fear. Fringe fact. Ancient peoples used marks and symbols not only for art and record-keeping, but as protection. Circles carved into cave walls, handprints near entrances, odd patterns drawn in ash or ochre. We don't know all their meanings, but we know they were placed. Deliberate. Ritual is a form of armour when reason can't explain the feeling in your bones. On the third day, the child from the visiting clan goes missing. No one panics at first. Kids wander. Especially ones that like following proto-dogs into bushes or pretending to be rocks for hours at a time. But as the sun rises higher and no small footprints are found, voices start rising. The mother is frantic. The tall man is already sprinting into the trees, calling in their own tongue. The clan fans out in search patterns. You and Kura check the stream. The water is cold and fast, the banks muddy with the melted edge of frost. You walk it for over an hour, eyes scanning for any sign, a dropped bead, a footprint, even the annoying carved bone animal the child always carried. Nothing. Until you find the bundle. It's not the child. It's a small pile of fur, one of the child's shoulder wraps, folded strangely and laid under a tree. Not dropped, not torn, placed. Kura crouches beside it and touches the fabric with 2 fingers. We leave, they say. You blink. We find the child first. Kura doesn't look up. We leave. Soon. When you return, the alpha is already preparing. There's no argument, no discussion. It's decided. The child is not the first thing this ridge has taken, just the most recent. And maybe not the last. You break camp fast. No ceremony, no pause for breath. What can be packed is packed. What can't is left behind. The fire is allowed to die for the first time since your arrival. The firekeeper carries only coals now, wrapped in bark and ash. As you leave the ridge, you glance back once. There's nothing there. No sign of the child, no shadow, no sound, but you still feel watched. Scholars continue to debate how much superstition guided Paleolithic movement. Were certain places seen as cursed, sacred, dangerous in ways that couldn't be explained? We may never know, but humans have always had instincts, gut feelings, and sometimes it's those feelings that kept us alive long enough to become modern. That night you don't settle in a cave, you stop in the open, under a wide canopy of trees. The fire is low and well hidden. No singing, no carving, no stories, just silence. Everyone sleeps closer together. Even the proto-dog curls up right in the middle. And while you lie there, knife in hand under your fur, watching the darkness press in on every side, you finally understand what it means to carry fear not just in your mind, but in your blood. The air is still tonight, unnaturally still, like the world has paused to hold its breath. No wind, no rustling trees. Even the stream nearby moves quieter, like it's tiptoeing through the woods in case something hears. The fire burns low, half covered by a hastily stacked barrier of stones. Around it, your clan is arranged in a tight circle, closer than usual, backs to each other, eyes out, weapons ready, faces drawn. No one says it out loud, but you all know this is it, the last stop. Not forever, just for now, but it feels final, like the end of something long and heavy. The shadows stretch deeper here. The forest is thick, but the trees are spaced just far enough apart to make you uneasy. Every shape looks like a figure. Every sound, even a snapped twig, feels like a declaration. You don't unpack your things, you don't even roll out your bedding, everyone just waits. And in the waiting, memories begin to settle around you like ash. You remember when you arrived, confused, clumsy, more burden than benefit. You remember how you burned your first piece of meat beyond recognition, and how someone still ate it out of politeness. You remember the first time Kura laughed at something you said, and the way the fire made their eyes glow like coals. Now here you are, furs ragged, hair tangled, face smeared with soot and ochre, and things best not identified. But alive. Changed, less of a visitor and more of a thread in the tapestry. You've become part of the rhythm even when it falters. Historical fact. The end of the Upper Paleolithic was marked by both innovation and instability. As climates changed, so did movement patterns, tools, social structures. People adapted, but not without difficulty. There are signs of struggle in the archaeological record, but also signs of resilience. The human ability to stay human even when everything else shifts. The alpha stands. He raises one hand and makes a motion, half wave, half sign, and suddenly everyone begins to move, quietly, methodically. This isn't panic. This is something older. Ritual. You follow as the group splits, half head toward the trees, toward a place where food was once found, water once flowed. A testing site, maybe. A future camp, if this one holds. The other half, including you, stay behind, guarding the fire, guarding the others, waiting. Kura sits beside you, their hands resting on their knees, their eyes scanning the woods. They're calm, not relaxed, just steady. You ask them what happens if the others don't return. Kura doesn't look away. Then we keep going, they say. Simple as that. Fringe fact. There's evidence that Paleolithic people often created fallback plans, secondary sites stocked with tools or food. Prepping in its oldest form, not because they expected to fail, but because the world often didn't care what they expected. Adaptability wasn't optional. It was instinct. Time slows. You eat quietly, cold meat, a few bitter roots, a bit of water from a leather pouch. You don't taste any of it. Your mouth is dry, your fingers twitchy. The proto-dog, normally asleep by now, is fully awake, ears perked, nose constantly in the air. If you didn't know better, you'd swear it was holding its breath too. And then, a sound. Low, far off, not a scream, not a shout, a call, a signal. You're on your feet before the last echo fades. Shapes appear through the trees, familiar or not hostile. The first party is back. They are tired, covered in scratches and frost, but alive. They found shelter. A better cave, drier, higher, safer. It's not perfect, but it's good enough. Everyone exhales at once. The decision is made, not with words, just with movement. The camp is broken before dawn. The ember bundle is carefully packed again, smouldering, precious, irreplaceable. Tools are strapped into the pouches, bundles shouldered. One woman grabs the child's carved bone animal from where it had been forgotten under a stone, then places it gently in the mother's pack without a word. You begin the walk at first light. It's slow, cautious, silent. Every footstep is a negotiation between trust and memory. The proto-dog leads for a while, then trots back to your side as if checking in. The children walk without complaint. Even the youngest seems to understand that this moment requires something more than words. You reach the cave just before nightfall. It's not large, not elegant, but it's enough. The fire is built quickly, and when it catches, the flame casts long, warm light across the stone walls. Someone starts humming. Someone else unwraps a pouch of dried berries and passes them around one by one. It's not a feast, but it's something. And that's when it happens. The artist steps forward and presses a fresh handprint to the wall. Not in the centre, off to the side. A quiet mark. Then another person adds theirs, then another. Until the wall is dotted with prints, overlapping, uneven, scattered. You don't mean to join in, but Kura grabs your wrist, dips your hand in ochre, and guides it to the stone. Your print goes up, messy, smudged, impersonated. But there, real. Scholars still debate what these handprints meant. Ownership, prayer, identity, a warning, maybe all of it. Or maybe none. Maybe they were just a way to say I was here, I lived, I mattered, I endured. And maybe that's what tonight is. Not victory, not peace, just presence. You fall asleep by the fire, the proto-dog curled against your back, Kura breathing evenly beside you, and the world, finally, quiet. You don't dream of darkness. You dream of firelight on stone, of voices rising in laughter, of hands in ochre. You dream of staying and waking and going on. So now you're here, curled up in your own bed, hopefully not sharing it with a proto-dog or a flint knife, but with the echoes of something much older than your walls. You've walked through a life that lasted tens of thousands of years. A life not recorded in books or etched on stone tablets, but lived in ash, in blood, in laughter and rain, in muscle memory and myth, in firelight and footsteps. Being a caveman, being you back then, wasn't all saber-tooth chases and heroic hunts. Most of it was boredom, repetition, mild hypothermia, and wondering whether the mushrooms were trying to kill you. It was waking up sore, going to bed sorer, and doing the same again tomorrow because you had no choice. Survival wasn't an achievement, it was a habit. It had to be. And yet, it wasn't just surviving, was it? You danced, you painted, you gave gifts, you mourned, you told stories to children around a fire you built with your own hands. You felt fear, you felt joy, you felt love. There were no written languages. But you knew how to say, I'm here, I care, I remember. So the next time you find yourself stuck in traffic, annoyed at the barista, doom scrolling at 3 a.m, maybe just pause for a second. Somewhere deep inside you there's a version of yourself who knows how to track deer prints. Start a fire with nothing but a spark and a prayer and sleep under the stars without wondering what's trending. That ancient you, they're still in there. So rest now. Breathe deeper, let your heart slow. The fire's out, the storm has passed, and the cave is quiet. And if you listen hard enough, you might still hear the wind in the trees, or the crackle of fire against stone. You made it. You're home.